comments? All right. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, November 25th meeting of the Green Bay Planning Commission. We'll start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller is excused. Alder Jim Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Darius Daniels.
Present.
Commissioner Ken Ravinsky.
Present.
Commissioner Emma Fullwilder.
Present.
And Commissioner Kelsey Lutzow is excused. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. With this item, we would ask to have item number 3 moved up in front of item number 1. And I would entertain a motion for that change.
So moved. Second.
So you just, is that approving the change or is that approving the
First the
agenda?
amendment, and then the next one will approve.
Okay, so that's, all right, so motion by Commissioner Daniels, second by Commissioner Ravinsky. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda. Second. As
Motion-
amended.
Motion by Commissioner Daniels, second by Commissioner Ravinsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the November 4th, 2024 meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Alder Hutchinson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to regular business, and we will start then with item number 3, which is consideration with possible action on the request by On Broadway, Inc. to approve their 2025 Business Improvement District Operating Plan.
I can take that one. Each year, the City of Green Bay Business Improvement Districts are required to submit their annual operating plans to the Green Bay Plan Commission for review and approval. Attached, you will find the 2025 operating plan that's been approved by the OBI bid board, and it also has been reviewed by the city attorney, which you will see the letter for review. That's all I have.
Okay. Did,
If you have any questions, but each bid will go through the same process
Okay.
this evening.
okay, oh, I guess I thought, I was under the impression that Ryan had something, that's why he moved the item up.
Oh, yeah. He might have something to say.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thanks for bumping me up on the agenda. I am, deer camp season, so I thought I would spare you the smell even through the phone screen here, but, much like years past, we typically, our bid assessment kind of aligns with some of the ongoing maintenance needs that we have within the district. And so you'll see from our proposed budget, a lot of that is maintaining the tree lighting that exists throughout the corridor, the annual maintenance, including the planter beds, which includes fall decor, winter decor, our pole banners, obviously all the watering of the flowers that has to go throughout the season. The public art, we continue to work on a number of initiatives, including utility box wraps that you've probably seen in many communities. I think Military Avenue has a few of them up as well. And so we do have plans to install a few of those in the coming year, as well as some creative seating, which is typically different than your benches, something that is a little more intensive but fun and playful to just kind of go along with sort of the artistic nature of the district. And then we always like to do at least a mural or two every year. This bucket of funding is typically not enough to cover all of those things. We do supplement it with other funding from On Broadway as an operating entity, but this allows us to cover physical improvements at least a percentage of it. So bike racks is something new that we're working to install. We do have a sponsor to match this amount, so $10,000. But much like our other public art initiatives, we tend to deviate away from just the standard traditional bike rack, instead probably favoring something that has a little bit of an artistic flair to it. And so we've worked with Aaron Rosnick on identifying a few locations throughout the district where those could be installed. 20% admin allocation, which kind of just aligns with our ability to cover some of our overhead operating expenses, including salaries, internet, rent, payroll, taxes, all of those other things that allow us to do the work that we do. There's a little bit of funding allocated for the audit. There again, On Broadway subsidizes this significantly, but it is a partial contribution towards the overall cost of the audit, which is required by state statute. There's $8,500 roughly allocated for district marketing, and this is really to help promote the district as a whole. So you think about shop the holidays, shop the Broadway district during the holiday season. Just encouraging people to really visit the district throughout the year, visit our restaurants, shop the retail stores, anything that really kind of helps get people out patronizing the businesses in the district. And then the last bucket is the economic vitality bucket. We would like to maintain our mini grant program. This basically allows us to provide a mini grant to retail operators who open in the district. Oftentimes, retail are the ones that fiscally have the hardest time to cover some of their startup costs, yet they're one of the types of businesses that are most critical to having a really vibrant retail corridor. So we do like to provide those grants as a way to incentivize retail operators to go into vacant storefronts. As part of that, we are also actively working on the launch of a retail incubator, which would house up to 10 to 12 different retailers that would put them through a year-long program and teach them all of the ins and outs of how to successfully run a retail operation. So that way, when they do come out of that, they've got all the skills, they're armed with all the skills that are necessary to be successful business operators. And then last but not least, the bid board made a commitment to help fund the overall cost to launch the public market. This fits in the economic vitality bucket because obviously the public market is something that is designed to attract a significant amount of visitors to the district every year, who in turn would patronize many of the other shops and restaurants throughout the area. So they would like to make a multi-year commitment to the capital campaign for that project. So that is sort of the cost overlay as it exists with the bid, and our objectives aligned with that. The only thing that would deviate that isn't reflected in the budget really is for us to take a look at some of the properties that were initially not part of the bid when it was created, but might have an interest in joining the bid today. It's not uncommon over a long period of time where property owners might not be in favor of joining a bid, but property owners change, businesses change, and the perspective too changes. And so while bids need to be, they need to be congruent, meaning that you can't provide gaps or holes. So the lines have to be completely contiguous to include all properties, and we have some folks on the edge that have expressed interest to us in becoming part of the bid, and we would put together a plan for that and bring that forward to the Plan Commission if that's something that the bid board chooses to proceed with. So happy to take any questions if you have any.
Any questions for? Okay, thank you so much, Brian.
Great, thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second. And a motion by Commissioner Urbanski and a second by Commissioner Fullwilder. Any further discussion? Go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then will that then go forward to City Council for the next meeting as well?
I'll report you.
What's the date?
December 3rd.
December 3rd, okay. Thank you. All right. All right, then moving forward then to item number 1. Consideration with possible action on the request by Downtown Green Bay Incorporated to approve their 2025 Business Improvement District Operation Plan.
Would you like me to go through it?
Sure.
So what happened
I was
each year,
confused for a second, I'm
the City of
sorry.
Green Bay, we bring, the business improvement districts need to bring their annual operating plans through the Planning Commission for review and approval. Attached, you'll find the operating plan that was submitted through DGBI bid board that has been approved by them and also reviewed by the city attorney.
Thank you. I guess are we hearing?
Do you want to just do one item at a time and then get approval, or would you like to go on to the, Old Main has also got the same,
I mean, I think we have to take
Well,
each
each
item at a
item.
time,
each item,
yeah.
that's what they usually do, yep.
Right.
And then Jeff is here to speak to it if you have any questions.
I guess do we have,
Yeah.
I guess usually.
I don't have any questions.
I guess I don't have any
Sure,
questions
it's-
either. Normally there's a presentation, but I'm okay if,
Yeah.
I mean, unless we have questions.
What do we
Jeff, would
do?
you like to speak?
Yes.
Jeff Barkis, Executive Director at Downtown Green Bay Incorporated. For almost 30 years, downtown and Old Main Street have been activating our downtown. We have a team of 8 professionals who coordinate events. They get involved with downtown beautification projects like the Ho-Chunk Beautiful Mural under the Nitschke Bridge, the Bart Starr Mural, the Ray Nitschke Mural. A couple of that have happened. We brought back a very cool art-related event called Art Fest Green Bay. We're heading into our 3rd year, so our team coordinates about 55 events a year. We do downtown beautification initiatives, business recruitment, and a lot of marketing. So I am here just to say thank you to the city partners. For every $1 of Business Improvement District dollars that are funded by the property owners, we go out and raise another $2 in sponsorships to carry out all of our initiatives throughout the year. So happy to answer any questions. We are looking ahead to an outstanding development that started construction today, and looking ahead to activities related to the NFL draft. We want to showcase our community. Have already heard from NBC Sports this week that wants to highlight some of the beautification of the downtown for this Thursday night's national coverage.
Excellent. All right, thanks so much, Jeff.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Revitsky, second by Commissioner Daniels. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then moving forward to City Council for December 3rd. Moving on to item number 2, consideration with possible action on the request by Old Main Street, Inc. to approve their 2025 Business Improvement District Operating Plan.
Again, our City of Green Bay's Business Improvement Districts are required to submit their annual operating plans to the Planning Commission for review and approval. Attached, you'll find the operating plan for 2025 for Old Main Street District. It has been approved by their board, their bid board, and has been reviewed by our city attorney as well.
All right, any
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Revitsky, second by Alder Hutchinson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward to City Council for December 3rd. Moving on to item number 4, consideration with possible action on the request by Military Avenue, Inc. to approve their 2025 Business Improvement District Operating Plan.
Here we are again. This time of year is always an important one for the bids to bring forward their business improvement district budgets and their annual operating plans. You'll find that they have been reviewed by their board, so Military Avenue has also had their bid board review this one, and also had the city attorney review that as well. So. Leah is here.
Okay. I guess if you wanted to speak, Leah, you can?
Sure.
Okay.
Everyone else did it.
All right.
I think the biggest changes in our plan this year is hiring a part-time person. I'm super excited to get some help for the farmer's market. And then also funds for the draft, which was somewhat in last year's budget, but also in this coming year's budget. We're definitely walking distance from all of those activities, so that'll be fun. Hard to even imagine what it will look like. But I'm looking forward to it, and all of our businesses are as well. We're also in the process of building a permanent farmer's market site that would also hold our office. So some of the funds have been set aside to do that. We've raised some money already and hope to start a capital campaign in the very near future. Any other questions?
Where would that permanent site be located?
Oh, I'm sorry, point of order. All questions.
You have to direct them to them.
Right.
We are still working on location, but it will have to be in the Military Avenue District, which is from Lombardi to just past Shawano Avenue, Murphy Park, basically, Murphy Park.
Murphy.
And there's always drawings at the winter market. I have some preliminary dream drawings, I call them, of what I think it could look like and how it could function as a perfect place to hold our market. Because we have to keep moving, we lose customers every time we move location because people can't find us. So it would be good to have a solid place for us to locate. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Leah.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on then to item number 5, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comment on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 5, public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a single-family residence in an office residential district located at 129 Oak Grove Avenue, submitted by Dennis and Cindy Scherer, property owners.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give a quick overview. So this site is going to look kind of familiar to you from just a few meetings ago. It is basically about 60 feet south of the Deckner Main Street intersection on Oak Grove Avenue. The reason for the request is to allow the existing single-family home to be conforming to use. There was a zone change request that came in for the Plan Commission on November 4th. I did receive a recommendation of approval that is going through the process. The final decision would be at council on December 3rd, which would be the same time that the CUP would be going through. The site itself is 2 original residential lots. It looks like they've been combined. There's a 9,000 square foot home on there, or excuse me, a 900 square foot home on a 9,000 square foot lot. The home itself, our records show as being 1926. The garage is much newer. And basically what is happening here, if you remember from the last discussion with the overall rezone, and you can go to the next slide. So the future land use plan shows this area to be primarily commercial. We can go to the next one. And this was that strange zoning that was stripped along Main Street. This parcel is one that's included in that rezone request. So this is the home itself with the aerial view up to the corner, and then a picture of the front of it from 2019. So the petitioners are intending to sell their property. There are lenders in the market that don't like to lend money unless it has a permitted use on it. So in the C1 district, which it currently has, this use is legal, non-conforming. It's not permitted in the C1 at all. In November 4th, the petitioner came through, had this rezoned conditionally on the December 3rd approval to an OR, which is a mixed-use district. It allows single families and commercial uses, and that way it can be consistent with the comp plan, but still kind of meet the needs of the citizens looking to sell here. But that OR district would allow single family only with a conditional use permit. So this is a follow-up to the original rezone for the conditional use. And that is that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Jenny. All right, so now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who'd like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? 3. No. All right, let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 6, consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a single-family residence in an office residential district located at 129 Oak Grove Avenue, submitted by Dennis and Cindy Scherer, property owners.
I won't go through the whole thing again, but staff is recommending approval of the request subject to 2 conditions, and they're pretty basic. One is that the zone change happen, and that is zoning ordinance 2524, and the second is compliance with all other regulations in this.
Motion to approve is recommended.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Alder Hutchinson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward then to City Council for December 7th, or 3rd, I'm sorry, December 3rd, my bad. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is a public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address and whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 7. Public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a covered front porch within the front yard setback located at 823 Newfeld Street, submitted by Karsten Van Stechelman, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property, 823 Newfeld, is on the city's west side. This is Colburn Park right here, and then Ridge Road, just get your bearings. As you can see from our future land use map and also our zoning map, this is very single-family residential in nature. There are a few duplexes in the area, but generally speaking, very heavy on single-family residential. The property here, there are some renovations being done to the property. This is just the existing street view. I would like to point out this little bump out area. This is the area that we're going to be using our setback measurements from. So for this property, they are looking to do an attached front porch that'll go along the expanse of this bump out area, which is about 18 feet. So 18 feet in length and then 5 feet wide is the proposal for that front porch area. When we are looking at front porches and the addition of them, especially the covered front porch, there's a section of code that allows for them to encroach into the front setback with a CUP, as long as it meets the rest of the standards of a CUP. So looking at the other houses in this area, the lot averaging for the front setback has the front setback at 23 feet. That's the required front setback. This house is currently set back at 25 feet where the bump out is, and about 30 feet for the rest of the property. So it's behind that front setback of the rest of the properties. With the request to add a 5-foot wide porch onto this, that would have an encroachment of about 3 feet into that front setback area. So they would have a 20-foot setback instead of a 23-foot. Again, only for this area, not for the entirety of the parcel. This is a little rendering of what it would look like, using that bump out area and then expanding here. Having it be covered is what allows for it to be a CUP through us. And then this is generally the design, pretty simple wood beams. We've seen a couple of these this year already, so that is all I have for now.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who'd like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 8, consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to allow a covered front porch within the front yard setback located at 823 Newfeld Street, submitted by Karsten Van Stechelman, property owner.
You're better than me.
I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Nothing more to add. We are just recommending approval based on compliance with all the regulations in our code.
2 questions.
Yes.
One, so you mentioned it being covered is why it's here right now. If it were not covered, then...
How do we have that in our code? If it's not covered, it still is an encroachment, but the covered allows it to get a CUP versus a variance.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
the covered front porch is more of an extension of a use versus a deck.
Okay,
It's a little dicey, but that's how it's written, so,
that makes sense, part of the structure.
yeah.
And then the current stoop that's on it is already in the setback then? Or like?
No, because they have the extra, they're setback further than the existing front setback requirement for that neighborhood because it's an infill. Usually for our front setbacks, it's 15 feet, it's 20 feet, whatever.
Sure.
When it's in an existing residential neighborhood, we do an average for the block. So that would be 23, 25 feet. See, this might pressure this off.
23.
They're at 25. Yes, so the 23, so it might be already be a partial encroachment, but usually the stoops aren't more than 2 feet.
So
Okay.
23 is what's supposed to happen, what they're proposing is 20. So we're
Yes.
talking about 3 feet.
3 feet of encroachment. with the new
Across 18
structure.
feet.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good with it, I just had those questions, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then that will move forward to City Council for December 3rd. We're moving on to item number 9, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items, and we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or are providing information. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commissioner to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 9. Public hearing on a request to rezone parcel 21-1336-2 located on the 1600 block of Amy Street from low-density residential to medium-density residential, submitted by Dalton Roosh, JJP Acquisitions LLC, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, so this is on the far east side, I would say the far east side. It's on the east side of the city. You can see Mason Street kind of cutting down, angling down to the east, when Cass Street, where it connects in. I have some notable things around here. There's a quick trip over on the corner of Abrams and Mason. Might be a identifier for you. This is a rezoning request for a roughly 3.18 acres of property. And you can see that outlined in red. It's an L-shaped property. It has a primary frontage, about 470 some feet. On Amy, it's got a little teeny bit of frontage. On Victoria Street, which is very little, about 96 feet. And then you can see at the end of Edison Street, it just stubs into this property as well. So those are kind of the access points there. The petitioner is making this request to rezone the property from R1 low-density district to R2 medium-density district to have the ability to develop a set of duplexes on the property itself. I guess I should kind of explain some of the land uses around there. So this is it from sort of an angled view. To the north is almost exclusively commercial. There is some old light industrial that's up there. To the east, you have Cumulus Media and a cell antenna, and then some multifamily. To the south is a good mix of two-family and single families, and to the west is primarily single family. As you get a little bit further, 2-3 blocks away, you'll start seeing some two families. Going on to the next one. This is the city's future land use plan. That dark maroon color is medium to high density residential. The yellow is going to be a low density residential, and the red is obviously commercial. And if you want to click to the zoning, you can see that the larger parcel there has that OR office residential zoning, kind of meet that medium high density. You go across Victoria, which I don't have the street names labeled, but across Victoria you can see some R3 multi, and then sort of that mix of commercial and light industrial along Mason and Cass. Everything to the south and the west are basically low-density residential itself. Click the next one. So this was a concept plan that was submitted by the petitioner. What they're really looking to do is 5 duplex lots along Amy Street, and then 2 duplex lots off of the end of Edison. Now, this plan shows Edison Street continued. I don't have a slide for it, but our future official map shows that to be cul-de-sac. So that's likely going to be required. That street doesn't go straight through anymore, and neither does Louise Street, which also ends at that point. And yeah, before you go to that one, I guess, if I go back one more. So when we talk about densities, and you have the low density and the medium density and the high density, and some people wonder what that is. Low density in our code's 4 to 8 units per acre. So if you know our code, a single family lot, minimum is 7,500 square feet. So you're looking at 4 to 8 units per acre. Medium and high is expected to be over 8 units per acre. So what's being requested here, when you analyze that whole site, you could probably get 8 or 9 duplexes if you really worked it. Petitioner's looking to do 7. That's about 4 units per acre. So it is a lower density than what the comp plan recommends. The zone change to an R2 is a natural progression to a higher density, but because of the odd lot configuration, the way it sits today, it would be very difficult to get higher density than 4. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. If you want to go on to the last one. So to kind of illustrate what is out here, so this is about a 1/4 mile in every direction from the site, so 1/2 mile across. The red are commercial properties. The yellow ones with little plus marks in them are 2 families that currently exist. The stars are multi-families, and then all the rest are single-family lots. So when you kind of look at the percentage for this sort of microcosm of a neighborhood, right now you're at about 63% single-family, 18% two-family, 5% multi, 5 lot numbers only, and then about 14-15% commercial. With a change, and the reason why I kind of bring this up is there's been discussion on densities quite a bit lately. With that change, it would drop the single family from 62% to 61%, and the two family would actually go up to 21% from 18%, but that's because you're adding 7 lots to the mix. So I wanted to kind of point that out as well. So it probably comes up. And the other things I think I will add, since it's the public hearing, we did get 2 phone calls, one objecting to the 2-family use altogether. The other one was just an inquiry. And we received 2 emails, and they had questions on them. So I'm just going to read the questions, and I can answer them when we get into the action item. So one was from, and I'm sorry if I don't get this name right, but Belen Valterra, from 1646 Edison Street. The questions included, does the city plan on opening the end of Edison Street through Victoria, or planning on cul-de-sacing on the other side of the proposed duplexes? We don't have sidewalks on the dead end. With the possibility of those duplexes going in, there will be sidewalks added on both sides, and who will be responsible to pay for it? And what are the odds that the proposal would be denied? The neighborhood informational meeting had a lot of people opposed. And then I also received an email from Joy Peterson at 807 Hireman. And actually it was a phone call, but it was how many 2-family homes will or can be built? Assume the homes are rentals. Will this cause an increase in traffic and noise? Will Louise and Edison expand? And how much will existing properties be devalued? I just wanted to get those questions out. I can answer them in the action. And to that point, the applicant did have a neighborhood meeting on November 18th. It was attended by about 14, 15 neighbors, and there was lively discussion back and forth. So, there you go.
All right, thank you. All right, now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who'd like to speak on this item. Please come up to the podium and state your name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Callista Babler, and my address is 811 Hireman Street. I'm not representing anyone but myself as a property owner. My property is actually on the block that is being proposed. I'm opposed to this. I know we're only talking about the zoning and not the proposed construction if it were to be rezoned. But with R1, those duplexes could still go up. It's just the 7 permits. I understand it's more costly. However, I think we are in a very unknown economic time. We don't know what the future is, and if this is rezoned, it's a lot easier to just go ahead completely rather than take it in steps. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you.
My name is Laura Wall. My address is 1658 Amy, so we are right across the street from where this construction is going to start. A few questions I have. I know that at the informational meeting, it was stated that these were going on slabs versus basements, and I'm just wondering why that's happening. That concerns me in that as far as the shoddy construction, for lack of a better term, and as far as down the road, this construction, how long will it last before it deteriorates? Also, do we as homeowners have the power to overthrow a zoning decision? And what should we do to overthrow that decision? And then finally, are they targeting a higher rent class, or is this going to be toward affordable housing? That's it for me.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is John Barrett. My address is 1656 Edison. I am the last house on the south side of, right next to where they're going to build the duplexes. My question is, right now it's all single-family residential homes. I'd like to know the reason why they want to put duplexes there instead of building single-family houses. And when I bought my house 20 years ago, I was told they couldn't build that in that field because of the radio tower. Does that radio tower have anything to do with building on the end of Edison Street? I oppose having to put in. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bill Galvin, Alderman, 4th District, 1244 Emily Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was contacted by several residents who expressed concerns about the development. They're worried about low-income housing that's not going to be maintained. They're concerned about, there's already issues with water on properties adjacent, and they're concerned that when this construction is done, is someone going to be keeping an eye on making sure that they're following all the codes so the water in their yards doesn't increase. And then the other concern was as to the owners. I had two people tell me that they live by properties already maintained by this owner, and that those properties are not very well maintained at all. They're not against duplexes per se being on there. They're against these people building and operating those duplexes. And they're wondering what recourse would be available to them. Once you give them permission, it's much harder to do anything about it once you grant it. And so they're wondering what kind of rules and things can be put in place to make sure that the owners do maintain their properties properly. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I'm Joy Peterson. I did call in. I live at 807 Hireman, on the corner of Hireman and Edison. I've been living there about 27 years since I've lived there. They extended Edison down and built 3 houses on each side of the street going towards the east. So that was all new under my day. It used to be just an open field with lots of water. When I first bought my house, the sump pump would run incessantly in the spring because there used to be, I heard, an underground creek that went through the area. With the building and the new construction, I'm assuming that some of their sump pumps took over because now mine runs normally. But I did notice there's an increase a little bit in traffic since we had 6 new houses, 3 on each side of the street extending into there. And I'm wondering now, if we go into this, is it going to be a cul-de-sac, or will it eventually go through all the way to Victoria Street? Because that would increase more traffic through the area. Because lots of times people are coming around the corner and they'll realize that dead ends on Edison, so then they back out and continue on Hireman Street. Because they're cutting through from like Mason Street and all that kind of stuff. And as far as the construction of duplexes, I always figure, well, if they're, dependency on who they're looking for, if they're high rentals or not, because if you get the lower rental peoples, a lot of people are going to be in and out, maybe some evictions and stuff, and are those people going to take care of their properties? And if not, will that devalue my area and my neighborhood? That's my concerns.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 10, consideration with possible action on a request to rezone parcel 21-1336-2 located on the 1600 block of Amy Street from low-density residential to medium-density residential submitted by Dalton Rouge, JJP Acquisitions LLC, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will attempt to answer the questions that kind of came up during the public hearing. So the first one was a neighbor saying that, well, the R2 would just allow them by right, where the R1 would allow them with the CUP on each, and that is 100% accurate. R1 district does allow duplexes with the CUP, which you've seen many, many times, but this would make it easier and quicker to pull the building permits and divide up the lots without having to come back for each individual, or to come with a batch of 7 at once. There was a question of slabs versus basements. The city code does not require basements, so you can build on a slab. Single and two-family homes are required to have at least one covered garage space. That does help to take care of storage if there is no basement. Let me see. Are they less quality? I think that's a judgment call. Without a basement is less quality or not. I don't know that. Do homeowners have the power to overthrow the petition? They can object if 20% of the owners of the land, adjacent to the land, or within 100 feet of the land object with a written petition to the city's attorney's office. The council would have to have a 9 out of 12 vote to approve the rezoning. So you can't necessarily just veto it, but you can require a higher level of scrutiny. And is it affordable or market rate? It's my understanding that these are market rate. The petitioner is here to probably answer that question with certainty. Another question where it's all single families in Edison, why duplexes? That would be a question for the petitioner. I can comment that our comp plan recommends higher density. So, I mean, if it was a clean slate, our comp plan recommends apartments. So, I'll just throw that out there. Told you couldn't build in the field because of the radio tower. City staff is not aware of any restriction on building on adjoining properties because of the tower next door. If there is some type of private easement or something that we don't know about, I don't know. I'm concerned with lower income, again, I don't know what the rent points are going to be. The neighborhood meeting, and petitioner can correct me, I believe he said around $1,500 to $1,700 a month. So, not really, doesn't fall into the affordable mark for our range. Concerned with stormwater, anytime a subdivision goes in and housing is built, city staff will look at those lots themselves. There should not be any stormwater just draining off to the neighbors. Those have to come in and go into the system. For most cases, sometimes they use above ground swale systems or backyard drains, all part of a stormwater management plan that would come in when they develop. Other properties owned by the company are not well maintained. And can we put any conditions on this one? As a rezone, you could not add any conditions onto that. You can't condition a rezone. However, you know, we have a very good inspection division, and if you have issues with any property, even if it's not in your neighborhood, feel free to give us a call. The city will send an inspector out, and we will follow up. And then I think the last one, would Edison be a cul-de-sac and Louise be a cul-de-sac or go through? Kind of mentioned that before. Our official maps have those as cul-de-sacs, so they would not go through. With this development, I suspect the end of Edison would have to have a cul-de-sac put into it for turnaround. of fire, garbage trucks, you know, street sweepers, whatever. But that is really a platting question. If low rents and the properties aren't taken care of, again, that falls into the inspection regulations where, like any other lot in the city, give us a call. You can go online and do it and make it real simple. And you can even put your name in and get follow-up. So with that, staff's recommendation is to approve the request of the rezone from R1 to R2.
All right, so now I do have a question, because you said we could do this, we could keep it low density and have a CUP on it, but we're going to medium. So what is the most, if we rezone this and then to medium, and then this person decides not to put 7 duplexes, like what's the most highest use as far as like, I'm not wording this properly.
How many units can fit?
But how much, well, no, like how dense could it get if we do it to medium versus keeping it at low with a CUP? That's, I guess, my
Sure.
question.
So
What other permitted uses are we talking about?
Sure. I kind of checked it. The uses in the R1 and R2 are not very different. The R1 requires a conditional use for duplexes or side-by-side. Duplexes are upper lowers. Semi-detached singles are side-by-sides. Or townhouses are all conditional uses in R1. The difference in the R2 is you would be allowed by right a 2-family, side-by-side 2-family. And with a conditional use, you'd be allowed townhouses or 3 or 4 units. So those are the big differences. When I looked at the site itself and the minimum lot sizes, minimum lot widths, I could maybe squeeze 8, maybe 9. What the petitioner has shown, some of the lots are a little bit bigger, but they don't all have great street frontage. Depending on the design of his units, they might be wider than a normal lot would have to be. So with 2 families, you're probably talking 7 is probably pretty close to what you can get on there. Maybe you can squeak another one out. Multifamily, it all depends on the structure size. I mean, if it's townhouses, depends how wide they're going to be. I mean, some of them are 20 feet wide, some are 40 feet wide. And that you could line along Amy. You could potentially do a 3 or 4 family, maybe on part of Amy, but it's not very deep. It'd be difficult. So again, without designing it, I couldn't tell you.
Right.
The other thing you could do is request the city to map and build Edison to the south. And then you would have, so cut in and cut to the south, then you could have lots off of that as well. But again, that is a exercise in, engineering how you could fit it.
Right. Above my pay grade.
We generally don't design out these vacant lots.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Okay, and you were talking about as far as the slabs versus the basements and water retention, that's all going to be addressed in the site plan?
Yep, as you go through your site plan review, and your land division, both those things are going to be scrutinized to their, the engineering standards and where they're running their stormwater to, and erosion control and all the other regular things too.
Quick question, you mentioned apartments. Apartments are not allowed in R1, correct?
They are not allowed in R1. Townhomes are allowed in R1 with a conditional use. 3 and 4 unit apartment buildings would be allowed in R2 with a conditional use. So that's your biggest difference.
Yeah,
3 and 4 apartment buildings,
3 and
so
4
smaller
units.
apartment buildings.
But you said a comp plan had that says,
Medium to high density.
Oh, okay.
so apartments, or something similar.
Something similar, higher density. And I think, TJ, part of that is, can you go up sort of 2? So when you kind of look at the zoning, that area of the higher density is really what they used to call buffer zoning. So you have the commercial along Mason and Cass, well, industrial actually along Cass, and then it's supposed to sort of, the higher densities buffer the lower densities from the commercial. Is an old school of thinking. We don't necessarily do a lot of that now with planning. We kind of integrate uses together. But back in the day, it was a lot of they would use them as buffers.
The only reason I ask is because the way that layout is, I'm a fan of, I guess I can't call my place a townhome. What is it called?
Yours is
Townhouse.
Where's the
Okay.
townhouse?
Well, I think it's two together, right? That's a duplex, but they look like.
It is not a
townhouses.
duplex.
Well, it's
But
a
it's a
two-family.
duplex, it's a beautiful duplex.
Yes.
But just with the layout of it, I was just thinking about that road, what we have in Navarino and what's in Whitney Park, like that was beautiful, and with the structure of that, but it just looks like a lot of open space, but it's just a question.
Dave, in R1, is there a limit to how many duplexes can be on a block?
There is typically, you want to stay 300 feet from another one, but we have many areas where they're right next to each other.
Okay. But so it wouldn't be impossible if we kept it R1 for the developer to get a CUP for each lot at our discretion?
Yeah, it wouldn't be, well, council's discretion, it wouldn't be
Council's
impossible, but 7 different CUPs. And again, when staff looked at the zone change, it actually is less than what the comp plan would recommend, which would be an R3 zoning.
Right.
So we advise to do the straight rezone rather than come through with each individual CUP.
I just quit. To eat some water.
Yeah, she has a work.
Must be a 3-zone.
Any other questions? Commissioners? And I guess if you have any questions for the petitioner or any of the people that came up and speak, we could open the floor to take comments and talk back and forth.
It's not catchy. Sorry. Oh, shoot.
Am I able to ask another question?
I'm sorry, point of
They would
order.
have to open the floor first.
Move to open the floor.
Second.
Motion by Alder Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Vinsky to open the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so I guess if you'd like to come and state your name and address for the record and just ask your question.
This is just a quick question. Laura Wall, I'm on 1658 Amy. What is the difference between zoning 2 and zoning 3?
Well, 2 is primarily a single and two-family district, 3 is a multi-family district, R3. Again, the biggest difference between there and an R3 district is going to allow duplexes, townhouses, 3 and 4 units, and more than 4 units by right. So by right is just come and pull your building permits and do your site plans, and you can develop them by right. Or as of right. You don't need to come through a council.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I guess. Callista, 811 Harriman. My other question is, if it is like high density, medium density, what is the appeal of this neighborhood? I mean, to me, I love it. It's quiet, very established neighborhood, but when I think about like high density, I know we talked about buffer, but I'm thinking about big city walkability. This area is not walkable. You're not walking downtown, you're not walking to get your groceries, and you're not walking to many restaurants. So like, what is the appeal to make it a higher density population area?
Well, the comp plan was done 22 years ago, so I did work here at that time, so I can tell you some of the reasoning, but yeah, I know, we're not making that. Some of it was that buffering, but also this is an area that is felt should be walkable. You have Main Street and Mason Street right there. It's often referred to, you'll read in literature, a 15-minute neighborhood where you can get services within 15 minutes of where your home is. Some would argue that it's got more commercial amenities than downtown does. So, that's part of the thought process. Generally, in our comp plans and our city plans, you're not going to see any areas that are all one land use. It's usually a mix of land uses in every area. That does reduce auto dependency. It helps interaction and it keeps a resilient neighborhood resilient. All one type of land use, if that land use tanks in the marketplace, generally has a much heavier hit in the neighborhood. It's like planting all the same tree. You get one disease, all the trees die. When you have a mix, you have more health that way, and also you have more housing choices. So to give you an example, your child grows up in your home, gets an apartment, then rents a duplex, then buys a house, never has to leave the neighborhood that they love. If there's no other housing options there than a single, they're probably going to have to move away. So again, just random reasons why land uses get mixed together. A lot of people call it neo-traditional, go back to the 20s and 30s and 40s, and that's how cities were designed. It was really the 70s, 60s, 70s where everything got separated. And no two land uses, shall touch each other. So a neo-traditional is much more of a modern, sounds kind of ironic, right? Neo-traditional is much more modern design style, but it is true.
I've got another question. My name is John Barrett, 1656 Edison Street, last house on the end. If you could put that slide up that shows the 7 duplexes that they're looking at. On the north side of Edison, towards Mason Street, they show 1, but that lot is over roughly 100 yards long. You could put, what's going to stop them from coming back and wanting to put 3 more behind the first one?
You have to have street frontage.
Well, what if they put a access road alongside their duplex?
Well, the access road would have to be at least 60 feet wide. That would not leave enough room to build a duplex next to it.
So they would have, that would just be an empty lot behind?
Oh, coming off Louise.
Well, it would be the rear yard of that home. Be a big yard.
It would be a big yard.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, but you can see the variety of yard sizes in this neighborhood just by looking at that map that's right there.
When they busted in that road and made the 6 houses, they had to give them a large lot. I mean, my lot is twice as big as the neighbor behind me for that reason. Right. But that would be a tremendous sized lot that they don't take care of now.
Petitioner doesn't own it now.
Joey Peterson on the corner of Hireman and Edison, 807 Hireman. Are they anticipating extending Louise down at all? That's the one street, it's to the north, it runs parallel to Edison.
Yep.
That empty lot extends in that way.
I mentioned that a couple times, that no, our official maps do not show Louise or Edison continuing.
So they don't intend to build on the rest of that tail of that lot up there?
Not on our official map. It ends right there. And if you go to the one that shows the lot somewhere, let's see. As you can see that those are right now actually lots that are, there isn't right of way there. So it's owned by individual property owners by, I can't read that name, but something Investments LLC, who own the properties along Cass. I think it's the same people. So there isn't a right of way there. They would have to request it and dedicate it and design it. And I don't know where it would lead to. I mean, never say never. Somebody could request it.
I was gonna say that, yes, dead lot then back there.
Is there anyone else with questions?
I don't have a question, but I wondered if the petitioner would come up, maybe, because maybe the petitioner can answer some of the questions, only because I would like to know as well, if I'm making the decisions on it in the, next Tuesday. I know it's unusual, I don't usually do that, but.
Okay.
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
So I'm Dalton Roosh, I'm the potential developer of this. What were some of the questions I could answer?
Well, question I had, the difference between a basement and slab on grade, just your reasoning behind that decision.
Yeah, we're trying to create zero entry property, so no steps, an older clientele potentially, so even from the garage into the apartment, there'd be no steps. So we want to keep all the amenities on the first floor. Yeah.
And what can you tell us about the neighborhood? Why did you choose this neighborhood? Was it just available property, or is there something?
I mean, available property is obviously a big one. It's hard to come by nowadays. Our office is in this neighborhood, so it's just a neighborhood we're in often. And I mean, I drive by this lot, almost on a daily basis. Yeah.
Are these going to be single-story buildings?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. I have a set of duplex plans. Whether we use them on this or not, I'm not sure yet.
Right.
The ones we have are 2-stall garage, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,400 square feet aside.
So you said your office is in this area. You do have other properties around this neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fantastic. I have no further questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Can I take any questions?
That's not really how it works.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll move to close the floor.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Daniels, second by Commissioner Vinsky to close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So I think it makes sense as a buffer in this neighborhood to have the medium density residential. Looking at the alternative to what the comp plan showed, I think this is kind of a in-between for the neighborhood and what would have been. So I'm in favor of it. I have no reason to oppose it.
I would tend to agree with Commissioner Vinsky. As someone who lives in a duplex townhome, very modern and amazing townhome duplex, I can see it does add to the community. And just in my neighborhood alone, I will put my townhome against any single-family home any day of the week. Again, this is a different developer, but I'm definitely a fan of the mixed use. I think it adds so much to the neighborhood. Again, different developer, but yeah.
Yeah, I live in a mixed-use neighborhood where there's a lot of single-family homes, but also townhomes, multi-families, apartment buildings, and I guess I chose that on purpose because I like the mix of uses. It gives you a lot of different people around, you see different family types, you see single people, you see older people that are downsizing, so everybody can kind of pick their place and they don't have to leave the neighborhood as they age or as their family circumstances change. So I understand where people are kind of coming from here, where they're concerned about the character of the neighborhood, but I'm looking at this more as more opportunities for your neighbors to stay when their lives change.
Just two comments. One is I'm impressed by the questions by people because they were spot on as to how this is supposed to run. They weren't turning to someone and asking a question. They were providing the comment so it could be answered, which is appreciated by me. The second is, this is not the first time where multifamily use was presented for a single-family area or adjacent to it. And on occasion, sometimes that multi-story structure actually increases the value of the neighborhood. Almost always it's equal, and sometimes it's greater, just because it's new. I guess I just wanted to present that. It doesn't mean that's necessarily going to happen, but it potentially could. So by rezoning this, it may have that potential. there. But I do hear the concerns of the neighborhood, and I think there are concerns that almost always appear during development like this. And I'm expecting it would be good for all those with concerns to show up at the Common Council meeting, because alders listen to the concerns of neighbors and voters. But I think it's a good discussion.
I think, just to touch on your concerns with the neighborhood, greenbaywi.gov, you can go online and file complaints if you need to, or talk to your alderman. That's really the best way to keep your neighborhood in check. So I think with that little plug, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. Any further discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward then to City Council for December 3rd. Moving on to item number 11, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor or oppose or only providing information. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 11. Public hearing on a request to amend uses and physical development standards of a planned unit development at 216 South Military Avenue, submitted by David Martin of Henry Real Estate Development LLC, applicant and property owner.
Thank you, Chair. So the acreage looking at here is about 8.3 acres off of South Military, south of Shawano Avenue, the old Shopko Jubilee Food site. Most of you are probably familiar with this, as this has gone through a PUD now. This is the third time since 2021 that this area has had a PUD. There was a PUD that was approved back in December of 2021 that sunsets in December of this year, which is why we're here tonight. In that existing PUD, this area was permitted to allow limited production uses for H.J. Martin and Trudell Health for similar uses for them. And by December of this year, those uses would expire. So H.J. Martin and city staff have been talking since about summer, looking at ways to approach this as the old PUD was expiring out here, and H.J. Martin has not found a user for this area to be commercial just yet. So as we were having negotiations back and forth on this, we looked back and through ways to try to find development standards that could promote and encourage commercial uses along the frontages of Military Alfred, and allowing for limited production in the way it's been now for the past 3 years or so within the majority of the building and the area back to the southwest, provided there was a sufficient buffer that would be built to separate uses in the future and still permit underlying commercial zoning code. If there was a developer who came in and said, hey, we want to use all 8.3 acres. As you see to the south, you have the railroad tracks. Back over to the southwest by the lower left, that would be a former PUD that was approved back in 2018 or 19, expired now. They're looking to expand some warehouse uses. If we go to the next maps, you can see the area itself. So for future land use, calls for commercial in the whole site. And in zoning, you're going to see that to the south of the railroad tracks, you happen to have the light industrial uses that exist out there. Lumber production, warehousing, things of that sort that's grown out of time in that area, and now has, over the past few years, expanded to the north. The distance that That light industrial area is off of the military corridor, varies between approximately 170 feet on that southern end to about 300 feet or so back over on the western end. So keep it in mind as far as when we're discussing development areas you happen to see in your packet. So the next slide, please. This is the existing view. So here is at Leo and Military. Looking back to the south, you see the old parking lot, you see the old building. This will be what, when we'll get into this a bit more in detail, development areas A and B primarily. A being to the south, B being the old liquor store area back over to the west. And then you have the view from Randall, which is a street that's parallel to Military, back over in the neighborhood, where you happen to have a mix of single families, two families, multi-families on the west side of the street. You have the back side of the existing liquor store, and then you have the back side of the old Shopko and the currently used lumber production and processing, warehousing, and training center. So as city staff was having negotiations with Martin over the past few months here, we looked at this as being, Martin would like to continue their uses in a permanent fashion to allow for the uses that were noted in your packets. That would include limited production and processing, distribution of building materials and supplies, contractor showroom, training facilities, office space, medical equipment service and repair, and storage of materials related to those permitted, or those uses that were suggested. And they want to keep that going. In the past 3 years, staff has not received complaints from the general public as to their uses out there. So since they wanted to continue this and they have not found a user, we look back to that 2022-23 when, if you remember at that time, there was the possible Bay City lofts that were proposed out front. In that time, we looked at the Suburban Institute Area A, which was the old parking lot and the frontage along Military, B being the old liquor store, C being the remainder of the property. We're taking a similar look at that now with this PUD. So why the dips, where's this all going for as far as what it means for development in the future? So development area A, looking to have an underlying zoning of C1 general commercial. It's a change from C3. C3, community centered commercial, is more of a basis around big box development, i.e. an old Shopko and Jubilee. And since you have limited space here, not 8 acres, C1 general commercial makes more sense along that frontage. So between the right-of-way and the existing building, we have approximately 228 feet or so of linear depth. For A, in negotiations back and forth, staff felt appropriate to have at least 200 feet off of Military Avenue for depth for potential future commercial development. And then capping it at 150 where there's that little annex space. If you want to go back to the photos, 29. Yeah, that one. You can see that box that kind of shapes like a mushroom on the south end. That's a 100 by 100 foot part of the building. That building stays in development area A for commercial purposes. So the use inside there has to still say as a C1 use. The remainder of the building in this proposal would then be for the limited production, or it still could be a C1 use if that were if they wanted to use it for that particular those particular uses, but would be what's being used right now, i.e. the limited production, the warehousing, the training facilities, the medical supply, repair, things of that sort. So with that, you have about 28 feet of land that separates development area A from the building. That gives you enough space to put in some buffers, which is noted in this PUD, is something that staff felt pretty strongly about, having buffers around a use so it become in a more permanent fashion. So 28 feet allows the users to have both a 5-foot strip minimum of a combination of fencing, berming, plants, things of that sort, and then about 22 feet or so to have as a driveway access, to access a garage door. That would be covered up by said berm and such. In negotiations back and forth with HJ, they were pretty adamant about the need to have their existing garage door that they have up front for their existing user, for Bell and Health, to go in and out of the building with their supplies. So staff felt it was an appropriate compromise. That leaves us with Development Area B to the north. Existing liquor store, it's been there for a long time. C1 use, the use itself, completely permitted, was permitted before, it's permitted still. But if that were to change in the future, the uses would go to a C1 use, and you'd note in there, in the staff reports, some additional uses that are generally in alignment with C3 uses. Auto rental, car wash, convenience store, fuel and gas station, minor and major vehicle repair and drive-through facility. Those were added on as well because of the nature of how it's behind military. There are some carrot and stick approaches as to the drafting of this PUD. Along military, you'll note the property owner could have more garages back along the eastern part of the building. If at some point 65% of the overall length of military is comprised of buildings, i.e. making a de facto alley in the back of the property. So if you get that area shielded off along military, you'll go driving down and you happen to see storefronts in front of the old industrial. At that point, they could get rid of the landscaping requirement and put up some more garages if they needed to, because you've created a de facto alley. And you've gotten that space along military to have commercial development on it. So trying to have some development space there to give and take. Development Area B and C has a standard for landscaping buffers, and so does the entire area along Randall Court. Just touching back, or circling back to the other uses for auto-focused. Usually when it comes to those 7 uses that were described, while you happen to see a lot of those uses up along Shawano, their floor print is just not particularly wide. It doesn't encourage a buffer of that industrial, and it gets to be an FAR that's just generally lower. So because it happens to be off of the main access, military, we felt it was appropriate there to allow those uses that are generally lower in FAR standards, but are pretty complementary of the other auto-focused uses along Shawano, like the drive-through facilities, the car wash that exists back up to the north. So you'll see a list of different architectural design characteristics, landscaping traditional yard, characteristics of this that was just mentioned just now. If you go to that next slide, this is a draft of the landscape plan. This would not meet the full-on proposed text that was put to you because there are some gaps in there as far as the landscaping goes along between C and A, and they happen to have 2 garages there. This is part of our give and take back and forth in trying to draft this PUD, and this was one of their final options that they had that they were looking at. Staff wanted to put in more protections to allow for more landscaping along military to really separate those limited production uses from commercial uses until such time that you actually have a built environment in front of the old Shopco, to where you get at least 65% of the overall frontage with the storefronts. So that's a goal for that.
Okay. All right. All right, so now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who'd like to speak on this item.
Good evening. My name is David Martin. I'm with HJ Martin. My address is 320 South Military Avenue, and I represent the property ownership group. Johnny did a great job explaining. We've been meeting with city staff since, I think it was June or July, and it's been a really collaborative process, which we really appreciate. The only thing we have a little bit difference of opinion on that we need your consideration is exactly for the buffer location and the north garage door separating Area A and Area C. City staff believes 22 to 23 feet is appropriate. We would preferably like 45 feet. Hopefully that we can compromise, and I'm here to answer any questions after your discussion. Thank you.
Hi, Leah White there, Military Avenue Business District for 25 South Military. I think the city staff did a great job of coming up with a compromise, and I'm happy to see that the activity on Military Avenue is retained, and I think that was always our goal, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 12. Consideration with possible action on a request to amend uses and physical development standards of a planned unit development at 216 South Military Avenue, submitted by David Martin of Henry Real Estate Development LLC, applicant and property owner.
Thank you, Chair. So the 200-foot area that's come into play with this, as noted, 227, 228 feet or so from the front wall of the old Shopko back east to the right-of-way. Why staff would like to see more than 200 feet if possible, but we understand the building is there. It's in place and not trying to tear down a part of the existing building. For a drive length, if we're thinking of what you have for minimum requirements for two-way traffic, that's 22 feet if you're having a typical drive lane in a parking lot. So allowing for a 5-foot barrier, and then that leaves you with about 22 to 23 feet as far as drivable area. Will it be tight? Yeah, it will be tight, but staff felt it was appropriate to leave as much room as possible for commercial expansion. And the more and more that gets narrowed down, the less chance to find a user to come in and truly redevelop that parking lot. To give some examples of other places that have about 200 feet or so of depth off the right-of-way, if you go up towards Huron Road in Mason, there's a strip mall that is across the street from Quick Trip. It has a Subway, a few other local businesses. If you were to go from the right-of-way back to the depth of that facility, it's 225 feet. Now, what does that get you? It gets you front-loaded parking with a drive aisle, a sidewalk, the building, and in the back, another parking, row of parking, driveway, and another row of parking. It's a lot of parking. It's very overparked out there. They didn't need to have that much for 225 feet, but they could have made that work on this property with 200 feet. If you think to some of the newer development along with Knighton and Schwabenon, where you happen to see the buildings, where it looks like the back is facing the road itself and your front then has the parking behind it, those parcels themselves could support a 200-foot depth drive, or sorry, width of, depth of a parcel itself. So it's narrow, or it doesn't go particularly deep. We want to get more. It'd be nicer if it was more like 250 or 300, but 200 is doable. The more you keep on shrinking that, it becomes exponential. So that's why with the 22-foot typical requirements, staff felt this was a good compromise to maximize in both ways to make future development move forward. And as noted, if they happen to get 65% of the overall depth completed with building frontage, that landscaping center goes away. So there'd be more space then to potentially have ingress, egress that could be shared between different users and more space turnaround. It's really more of a care to try to get that development to actually be done in the future. And with that, staff does recommend approval of the PUD as drafted.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have a conflict and need to recuse from this action.
All right. One, two, three, we got 4 of 7. That's close enough.
We're at the edge.
At the edge, right. No, that's it.
Close enough, it's good.
That's it.
You're good.
Okay.
Could I speak?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. Alder Melinda Eck in my district, and I did want to speak in favor of this. I've, been part of the process of going to meetings and touching base with the Military Avenue Business District, getting their feedback, and I think it's a good compromise. And although I know this isn't part of the decision processing, but talking with the Martins, their desire is to fully develop this property, beyond what it is now. And I like the idea of this making it look prettier, for lack of a better way to describe it. In the meantime, without them having to put a ton of money into it, because then there would be that, less likelihood to do the future development. But in the meantime, this will make it so that it looks better from the view of Military Avenue. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. So, I know we're talking about things about drive aisles and garage doors and things of that nature. Are we, this is a PUD, so, are those things that we are actually, or are we just looking to basically extend this PUD that's expiring?
So with this PD has a lot more language compared to what was there before. Before it was essentially saying you have a property, it's C3 use. You can have these limited uses for all intent and purpose uses that were noted here. There's a few other ones that were added on in this iteration that is different. But essentially what they're doing out there now, and it didn't go on, it sunsetted in December.
Right.
But there were no, that's why when you happen to go out there, you're not seeing landscaping that was done. For all intents and purpose, the annuities that were out there were putting up the jersey walls, the barriers, if you happen, people were cutting through, you'd see that. But there were no additions beyond the garage doors that were placed onto the building between 21 and 22.
So originally, the industrial use was temporary. And that was, what was our reasoning for making that temporary? There was potential redevelopment of the whole site, or?
We had a whole.
It was an apartment complex.
Well, that was
in
separate
front.
from the
That was in
industrial.
front. I think
I'm just,
the
now
building-
we're gonna have permanent industrial
Right.
in a neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't have the specifics as to what the thought process was in 21 as to allowing this. I mean, clearly was the intent of this being 3 years and then having this reexamination at that point. And trying to find users, i.e. what happened in 22, 23, where there was the intent to have the multifamily. No, they've been there for 3 years. As noted, staff has not had complaints with this as far as I'll note, we had a neighbor meeting back on October 17th. It was noticed to the public, and we had one person come in from the public on this. When we had our meeting for the multifamily back in December of 2022, that did have about a dozen folks who were there on a snowstorm night. So it was, people were much more interested at that point about that use compared to this use.
I think it had a lot to do with the proximity, just because H.J. Martin needed the space and it was available, and there was a Dairy Queen right there too that's gone, right next to the railroad tracks, so. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was here at that time, and I think when that went through in 21, the thought was like with other limited production and processing, if it's behind a commercial use and a commercial corridor, it was less of an issue. And I think the sunsetting was just to be careful that there would be a commercial use at one point. The city did work with a housing developer to try to get them out front. That did not work its way through the system. And so then I would assume the petitioners continue to look at developing and just didn't get the bite. So now it's try to make it permanent and allow them a long-term marketing strategy rather than a quick.
A long-term marketing strategy or what?
For that front parcel.
To market the
front
front.
parcel.
Yeah, I'm just nervous that 2 years from now, it's still gonna be the same the way it looks now.
Well, no, because, there's gonna be, if we do this design standards and landscaping that we don't currently have now.
There's nothing else but landscaping.
Right?
But then that also makes it makes it so that developers will look at it possibly.
Yeah, I just remember we spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
We went through the last PUD or whatever it was, it got approved in Plan Commission, and then at Common Council, it bamboozled. So, yeah, it's disappointing. I just think about 2 or 3 years later of what could happen in that area.
I would say, I would like to keep the industrial as a temporary use. Is that possible? Leaving that in there temporarily until that development happens in front of it, and then we talk about it again? Put another sunset on it? I just,
Yeah, right.
if we're dangling carrots.
Sure. We can. I mean, in general, it's not the best practice to just do that where there's any sort of sunset on it.
Sure.
Just trying to get to a permitted.
Would the sunset
Yeah.
be incentive to have them develop the property?
Well,
Or
I
would
mean-
this be more,
I mean, I think they've been trying development. I don't think it's for lack of trying at this point. I think, the fact that the alder for this area and, the person who's at the head of the bid board for this area are both in favor of it. I'm hoping that, we're looking at that front parcel, trying to attract someone in there, but, H.J. Martin uses that. It's right next to their other property. I can see how that is extremely convenient for them.
I would say convenient, but not appropriate for the neighborhood. So convenience at what cost, I guess, is what I would say.
Is it fair to say this plan is trying to help develop this site with what there is to work with? We're trying to market it? Is the city trying to help an owner develop or sell portions of this or whatever by doing this plan?
I'd suggest this plan is a compromise that can allow for physical conditions to best market the property in front, creating that frontage to be commercial use, while still allowing the existing uses to maintain in the existing building.
Okay, so it's been a discussion, compromise, but the goal is to help market the frontage so it can be developed.
We're trying to utilize, this comes to that 200-foot discussion, and
Right.
staff is content with the 22 feet and still allowing for a single garage stall along the eastern part of the building with the landscape barrier happening there. Because there has to be a separation of uses where you have an existing, or a garage between this limited industrial use and then other users where it's going out towards the frontage. Right now, that's facing towards the frontage of military, the garages that exist. And that wouldn't be code, frankly, so.
When were those garages added? Like Shopko didn't have garages.
Correct, those garages were added back in 2021.
2021?
Yeah.
Okay, so they kind of created this issue?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why in the PUD itself, it's notes to have just a single garage along the eastern part of the old Shopko building, and then one other garage back over in that 100 by 100 foot annex, where it's commercial areas. The uses that the Martin Group has suggested over in that area might be some sort of contractor showroom for the garage door operations, so you need to have a larger space to get things in and out. As part of the condition, the addition to have at least a man door, and then that garage door match the man door to be transparent, not just an industrial solid look, but to look like it belongs in a commercial area.
does this PUD encourage development or encourages the status quo?
I'd say it does a combination of both. In this sense, you're keeping the status quo as far as the building that's there right now. This allows it to happen, but it also gives definition and depth with landscaping cues that separate the commercial use and limited industrial uses.
And just a reminder for PUDs, you kind of add more design elements to it. That gives us the most flexibility with existing buildings or future buildings to have those design features added in too. So if you can get around the use and you're thinking, I just wish this building looked better in the meantime, there are things that can be added there too.
Right. And normally you'd have, if you had to have the user out front where you can see the design standards of something, that'd be nice and helpful for a PUD. We're trying to put forth design standards that can ultimately allow for growth to happen along that frontage on military while maintaining that buffer and giving the carrot and stick that states you put that 65% of buildable area in the front. You've created that actual frontage of commercial use along military. You can get rid of the landscape buffer between A and C at that point.
And keep your permanent industrial.
And keep your permanent industrial if you,
Okay.
yep,
Because that's ultimately what we're looking at.
yep, yep.
Do we have a current like zoning map of that whole area?
Yeah. Keep in mind that areas of south, the limited industrial, that depth coming off of military is going to vary. Down on the south end, about 170 feet, and up on the north end, around 300 feet or so, to give some perspective.
How common is it to have industrial sandwiched between commercial and residential?
Not common.
Okay.
But you do have that here existing to the south. I mean, this is where
It's there,
it
but
is
not common.
this way. This has been expansion of this down in that neck of the woods for the past 20 years. I'll note as far as our initial discussions with HJ, they look to have development area B, the liquor store, to potentially have limited industrial uses that far north. Staff didn't feel it was appropriate to go any further than what's there now. So the line ends at the southern right of way of Leo. It went straight through the west.
Okay.
You can see that then in slide 30.
Can I add something?
We're just looking at that, we're looking at the red and white stripes, and we're just looking at a square inside of there that would be the gray and white to match the other gray and white down.
Right.
Because you cut the top off of that, and you cut the other, yeah, exactly, right, yeah, right there, yeah.
Can I add something? So this property has been marketed, so there's a sign. They've been working on it since they had this CUP, and I know it's a limited time. So it's not that they haven't been trying to do that. I understand that that apartment building on the corner did not happen, but that was something that actually didn't pass council. And a lot of people were against it. It didn't cover up the whole building, it covered up part of it. So I guess, let's not consider that. But they have been trying to develop that, and you can't just snap your fingers and make it happen, I guess is what we have to consider, that they're trying to add landscaping, making it look better in the meantime while still marketing it to develop it. So I know there's that, you can extend it out again, another year and then another year. But in the meantime, we would still be looking at the building as is if we do not do the PUD. This would require them to add the landscaping and different things that would make it look nicer. And in the meantime, they're still trying to develop it. They have the developments down, the Petco and all of those things around them. They're still working on getting something in there, but like their property in Ashwaubenon, I think it took like 7 years to get Bellin in there where the old Menards is. So I've talked to Ed enough times. This is, things he's told me that they're, hoping for something really big there. But if you're asking him to do a lot more with adjustments to the building, that's more money into it, and you're going to be less likely to want to, develop it. You know what I'm saying? That's, I said that before, but I'm repeating it because I think it's something to consider. Because I think it would be nice to have a much bigger development there in the future, and we don't want to stifle that. Thank you.
Can I ask another
So-
question?
Oh,
there,
do you
can I
have
ask
a
a
que-
question?
yeah.
How do you feel about industrial in a neighborhood?
I'm not crazy about the industrial part of it at all. I don't like what it looks like right now. I would like to see improvements. And I look at this as it's an improvement in the meantime while they're still trying to develop it. Because they have been, like I'm saying, they've been trying to get someone in there. They've had their number up there. David has told me he's really actively tried to find somebody to go in there. So I look at this as a possibility for improvement in the meantime. And I mean, obviously, the way this is set up, it's trying to make it develop in front of it, but it could be something bigger.
Sure.
So the PUD stays with the individual, doesn't it?
No.
It stays with the property.
I'll move to approve.
Sorry, Jim, I can't support it without changing that industrial use to temporary or some other, I can't make that permanent. I realize that there's some there already, but adding more, when does it stop? It doesn't feel right to keep that, or to make that a permanent industrial zone in that area.
It feels like the same conversation we had 3 years ago, whenever, and we're still revisiting, and we're just putting lipstick on it to make it look pretty.
Well, I view it as a negotiated in-between, and I guess I view that better than just leaving it as it is.
Can the petitioner say something or not right now?
The floor is closed at this time.
What happens if no one seconds?
Motion fails.
It fails, yeah. I mean, it's hard because you don't want to see that industrial there, but we haven't had any issues with the current people that are using it. I see all the development going in on Military, with the Sears finally being torn down, that Starbucks going in. I bet you there's a whole bunch of other things that are going to be popping up there too, and I feel like as those kind of developments come through, I feel like they're going to be looking for parcels like that one in the front of that Shopko property. So, man, I can see it go both ways.
We see development going just everywhere. Just
Devil
like that.
advocate. Imagine if that Sears had become an industrial building. Devil advocate.
Yeah, but that's a completely different, and that spot was completely different.
Not as close to the neighborhood, you're right.
Okay.
Dilapidated building that came down and then it redeveloped.
True.
Just saying, there's probably options out there, and I don't think making that a permanent industrial is the right one.
Can we make it unpermanent?
Temporary?
I mean, like the 3 years?
You could put it.
I mean, I don't want to make them keep coming back here, but at the same time, like, the concern is,
You can do it, we don't like doing that, but you can do that.
Okay.
And I'll note, if there is no action on this here, the uses that are there have to go away. So what's there existing right now has to stop. It has to go either be vacant or a C3 use.
And I guess I would point out, I mean, what the plan commission is recommending does get forwarded onto the council. The council makes the decision. So, I mean, you could put another sunset clause on it if you're concerned that that use is permanent, another 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever you feel is appropriate. And that could change at the council level. But if the big hangup is really the permanency of that use, we've done sunsets many times. And to the point, the original 3-year
why do we do that?
discussion was very similar to what you're having right now.
Okay.
Would you be opposed to that use if there was a commercial building in front of Military?
I would still be.
So you had commercial and then you had the light industrial behind it?
I would.
So that's not going to change?
It's the industrial use that's my hang-up. I was thinking of other areas that had this, and there's other buffers between, like the East Town Mall. There's a larger buffer between the industrial use that we allowed there, if I'm correct, and the residential use.
Yeah. There's a parking lot.
Parking, there's other commercial uses. That's the only other one I could think of that we approved industrial.
I guess the downside to putting in a time frame like that is that you wouldn't want to necessarily be the owner and doing improvements to it with the understanding that it could go away in 3 to 5, whatever time. Is that basically the problem? Because we did the 3 years before. I mean, we're just trying to, it's checks and balances, and we're just trying to, the checks and balances.
And we did 3.
Right.
They said their other development took 7 to get the Bellin. Maybe another 5 years would get it.
I think generally.
I'd be okay with 5 years. I just don't, the permanent is.
Generally, the sunsetting has certain issues, like not doing capital improvements because you don't know exactly what this is going to be. It also makes it a little more difficult for a business to operate because they have to think, the operations I have in this facility, I'm going to have to relocate at a certain time period, which is probably what happened this summer when they came back to the city. So sunsetting can be problematic, but we do it. A lot of communities do it. If that, I guess if, from a staff level, and I won't speak for John, I think the sunset would be preferable to a recommendation of denial.
I mean, as we're discussing this, as far as compromises on all sides when it came to this, the future land use calls for commercial throughout the whole site, so it is a compromise to be where we're at here today to be discussing this.
So we didn't have a second on that first motion, so, and I don't think we're going to get it, so that will fail.
So I would make a motion to approve, how would I word that? With a sunset added to the industrial use of 5 years. That is my motion.
I would second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, we have 1 abstention. All right. And that moves forward then to City Council for December 3rd. Moving on to the next item, which is a public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Planning Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. And we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or are open to providing information in the matter. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable items. You must be recognized by the Planning Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 13. Public hearing on a request to amend a planned unit development, Southwest Woods, located at 2405 West Mason Street Frontage Road and the 1100 to 1200 block of Hinkle Street from West Mason Street Frontage Road to Hobart Drive, submitted by DTHMC West Mason LLC on behalf of multiple property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this request goes back to ZO03-24, which was the approval of the original Southwest Woods PUD. So we've got 2 PUDs here back to back. In black there is the PUD boundary. So you can see it does take up quite a bit of land. The items that we're looking at tonight are dealing with the Dollar Tree parcel, which is 2405 West Mason Street frontage, and then lot 17 at the southern end of the development. So if you want to go to the next slide, is the future land use map. As you can see,
most of the properties in the area are commercial, but of course now we have a PUD on top of it that does allow for residential. To the east, you've got the commercial. To the south, you've got the multifamily, high-density office housing, and some of those areas still have yet to be developed. And then to the west is single-family homes with some multifamily. And then to the north, you've got the West Mason Street, and then beyond that, the large regional commercial. And then to get back to the zoning, again, this particular area is currently in the planning and development. On the north side, you've got some C2 highway commercial, and then some regional commercial with the Sam's Club, Walmart. To the west, there is commercial as well as residential, single family and multifamily. To the south, you've got the park and the school, and then to the east, some vacant land, as well as hospital, and then some of the other commercial uses like Chili's. So if you want to go to the next slide. Here is the way that the development map currently exists for the PUD. So we're looking in particular at that northern area, the commercial redevelopment site, and then we're adding an additional fifth item, which is the single and two family area on the south. As part of this request, we tried to break it up into some bite-sized amendments. So the first amendment is to adjust the boundary line of 2405 West Mason Street frontage road, and that's for the Dollar Tree. This goes back to, they are doing a certified survey map that makes that lot smaller. So this amendment actually makes the PUD smaller. Amendment number 2 is to reduce the access distance from an intersection for 2405 West Mason frontage road, the Dollar Tree. It's the intersection of Hinkle with that frontage road. Code requires 200 feet when there is a speed limit of 30 miles per hour, and they're requesting to go to 80. Amendment number 3 deals with a reduce in the separation distance between driveway center lines for the Dollar Tree site, 2405 West Mason, to go from 200 to 180. And then amendment number 4 deals with that lot 17 to add some use and dimensional standards. That lot was not addressed at all in the previous PUD, so now we're giving it the necessary uses. So this gets back to amendment number 1, which is the boundary amendment. So on the left is the existing boundary, and then on the right is the proposed. So you can kind of see hopefully where the dashed area is. So that what ends up happening with the CSM is you would have a PUD that crosses into other parcels because of this certified survey map that would end up getting created. And we don't want to split zone parcels. It makes administering ordinances very difficult. So that is what the first amendment's for. If you go to that slide, you can see lot number 4. So it's following those property lines of that new certified survey map that they're proposing. For amendment number 2, this is regarding the access distance from that intersection, going from 80 feet, required 200 feet going down to 80 feet. And then the next slide, which is the separation distance between driveways on the same part, when they are on the same parcel. They should be 200 feet of separation, but they're requesting 180. For amendment number 4, which gets back to lot 17, the applicant has requested to allow for uses that are permitted in the R1 and R2 districts. They're particularly looking for a 2-family duplex unit to go there. But I have no issues with doing, the 2-family can go single family if you are, doing like a 0 lot line. But this at least assigns those particular uses. They do want to change the setback requirements, and these mirror the development of the single-family homes to the north there. So this would be following the same setbacks. So the front yard setback on Hinkle would be 12 feet. Our code requires 15 feet for lot averaging as it's developed. And then to note, when there is right-of-way, anytime there's right-of-way, you treat it as a front yard. So this is clarifying that Bellwood Lane, which isn't going to be extended, would be treated as a side yard, and that setback is 6 feet instead of the 12 feet minimum. And then the rear yard setback would change to 10 feet as opposed to what the code says is 25 feet. And then the side yard is 6. If it's a single story, we allow 6, but if it's 8 feet, it can be 8 feet if it's 1.5 or more stories. And again, clarifying that Bellwood Lane is a side yard and not a front yard. So, let's see, I think that is everything. So, yes, I guess we can go into recommendations for the next. Yes, okay. And then the applicant did provide a PowerPoint, and I did print out copies of that PowerPoint. So I'll pass that around.
That's probably more for the action item, but typically we don't have people present to the plan commission individually. So she did print it out, but it is up to the plan commission if you want to open the floor and ask them to present. We have this PowerPoint queued up. Again, not super typical, but it's at the discretion of the commission.
There's a reason why I wasn't in that.
We just received it.
All right, so with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 14. Consideration with possible action on a request to amend a planned unit development, Southwest Woods, located at 2405 West Mason Street Frontage Road and the 1100 and 1200 block of Hinkle Street from West Mason Street Frontage Road to Hobart Drive, submitted by DT HMC West Mason LLC on behalf of multiple property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So our recommendation is to approve of the request with the exception of the access distance from the intersection, which is amendment number 2, and the driveway separation distance, which is amendment number 3. But then we would have the condition that the CSM get approved. So the reason for our recommendation is, especially when it comes to amendment number 2, because that's the bigger issue and it affects number 3, is that there are too many conflict points at that intersection, and just that drastic difference from 200 feet down to 80. And then the roadway design on Hinkle has potentially changed that does not reflect the TIA that was submitted to the Public Works Department. And then when it comes to amendment number 3, just because we recommend, we don't really have any issues with the separation distance per se. It's just that since we don't support amendment number 2, it kind of becomes a moot point. But that's our recommendation. I did get a call from Thomas Batowski. He lives at 1152 Hobart Drive. And in our discussion, he was really more, he just had questions because there was a recent application for multifamily to the north, and just the amount of requests that are coming in there. And I explained to him that there is a lot of redevelopment happening there. There's a lot of requests that have been coming in. He had questions about, like I said, the multifamily and how many units were going there, but he did have some, a question about what the traffic impacts could be for him on Hobart with that intersection changing and the new road going from Hinkle down to Hobart.
Okay, so I assume that with items number 2 and 3, that's fine. Mr. Grenier is here.
Yes.
Patiently waiting.
And generally, we try to get either a memo or somebody from Public Works here when it's a traffic-related issue. We can give you our recommendations based on best planning practice, but really, especially with that intersection being redesigned in a unique way, I would say, we really felt we needed the engineer here.
So I guess if you would like to give your 2 cents on this, you'd be appreciated.
Certainly. Steve Greer, I'm the Public Works Director. The traffic impact analysis that originally was provided in support of the PUD and the development in general called to have a splitter island south of the frontage road on Hinkle. That splitter island, as designed, the south end of it terminates in the middle of the northernmost driveway. Their current design plans have pulled that splitter island almost 35 feet north. The northbound Hinkle approach to the south frontage road had 2 lanes. One is a through left, one is a through right. They've subsequently reduced that down to a single 15.5-foot wide lane. That's going to create additional queuing because instead of 2 vehicles being able to go through at any one time, only a single will. The splitter island came down to the middle of the driveway, but the queuing lanes extended almost 200 feet to the south, where that driveway should be. Now that you're only going to have a single lane instead of 2 lanes, that queuing is definitely going to go south. You will be challenged to get out of the southern driveway and make a left to head northbound. Finding acceptable gaps for that northern driveway, only 80 feet out of the intersection, is going to be almost impossible. Those intersection setback distances that we have codified are in there for safety purposes based on traffic volumes, traffic movements, and vehicle speed on those roads. 200 feet is recommended as a minimum. You're looking at something less than half. That's just not something that the Department of Public Works can support. As Dina had mentioned, had that northernmost driveway been an acceptable distance out of the intersection, the distance between the two, although below the minimums identified under code, we probably could have worked with that and found an agreeable solution for that, but being 80 feet out of the intersection is simply unacceptable for us.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. Grenier? Thank you so much. further questions for staff or discussion amongst the commission? I mean, I had a really hard time going against anything that Public Works is saying when it's less than half the distance. Do we want to open the
I
floor
want
for
to
the
go
applicant?
against it. No, I'm just kidding.
You do, listen to you. Do we want to open the floor for the applicant?
Move to open the floor.
I guess if I could request, if you would like, he has provided the city with a PowerPoint presentation, which we have queued up. Not typical, but if you'd like that, we can queue it up.
I mean, I guess I just, you probably have more questions than, I mean, it's up to the commission. I feel like it's up to you.
I don't really have any questions.
Okay.
There's a motion to open the floor.
Is there a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, second. I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no. Hear my,
Hey, just all of me.
My bad.
Motion by Alder Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Vinsky. All those in favor?
Aye. Didn't wait, I can't hear.
And I already thought the floor was open, so, all right.
Good evening, Garrett Bader, 300 North Van Buren Street. I have to chuckle from the responder who said he's getting a lot of letters for it. Melinda looked at me, she said, they're all from you. I'm like, I know, they're all from me. Everyone around this table, RDA, staff, probably everyone in this room has been involved in this a lot. I think it's very involved, it's very encompassing, but we're trying to make a lot of positive change that comes with it. If indeed the PowerPoint could be teed up, I would love to walk through it like the pseudo weatherman that I want to be.
And what's the time frame on this?
Oh, minor brief.
Brief?
5.5 minutes. Can it be run, or is it, otherwise I'll step up there and I'll walk through it.
Oh, no, you don't. It's just us.
All right. So I want to start with this one because, again, I want to thank everybody for having been involved on this. We've made a lot of progress. To see a plat map that now has wrote in the subdivision platted parcels, the future parcels, it means a lot. So thank you to everyone here that's been involved by getting us to this point. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, you saw the CSM earlier that Dina had up here. This is the CSM with the site plan overlaid on it. So you can see the different lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and how the site plans are running with all of that. So they're all interconnected. You have easements that run through all of them. So if you do come in here, or here, or here, you have access throughout. Let's go to the next one if you wouldn't mind. So I took away here, kind of the current situation, if you will, just to peel away some of the weight on it. Here's the existing Verizon building, the existing, what is becoming Dollar Tree as we speak. This is the site plan that has been submitted for Sevenbrew to show up here. This is lot 2, that would be a subsequent action coming up along with this on the rezoning for this and the partial parking lot use for this. So just to see it in context right now of how the current parking lot use will work to support this until this building is up. And if we go one more slide, please, Steph. There we go. So in the meantime, you'll still have this grassy lot that's here on the current Verizon parcel, but when the subdivision occurs, it's part of lot 2, parking lot there for this in the meantime until this shows up. Let's go one more ahead. Putting those CSM boundaries back on again. Here's your CSM subdivisions, just to put that in context of how the parcel is going to be planned to be developed. And this, of course, are driveways. So, the recommendations from staff are approvals except for the 2 driveways, which, of course, here I'm asking for you to approve. Here's my rationale behind it. Number 1, the current driveway that's out there right now is an awful 35 feet. I understand that 80 or 85 is substandard. There's no argument there. It is 2.5 times better than the 35 feet that is there right now. For anyone who's driven out here, this is lousy, to say the least. Part of what we're doing here and all the traffic studies that we've done is to improve what's here. But as I've said many times to this committee, to RDA, to anybody that'll listen, we can't get to perfect here. Perfect just simply can't exist in the way that this has developed over 50 years, but we're trying to make it really, really good compared to what it is right now. So while this is 85 feet south, it's certainly better than 35. Now this star right here, I was out there last Friday and I took a panoramic view looking at this. So if you go to the next slide, what you'll see is looking straight down. Here's the throat that we'd like to put through and connect up to Hinkle. Here's Hinkle that's going to come south. So if you click again, please, Steph. Here's the yellow outline showing roughly what Henkel's gonna do. This is taken kind of right in the middle of what the middle of Henkel Street and the middle of where this driveway intersection would be. So simply for context, on the current driveway right now to where the intersection would be, even though of course the street does not go south at this moment, and 85 feet was the center line, 80 or 85, right here to the center line of that street to where the curvature of that intersection will begin at that point. Now, if you pay special attention here, what we're trying to prevent is the next slide, what happens currently, daily, all the time, which is as traffic is on this frontage road, it's blocking this driveway. This happens constantly, which means if you're trying to come in here and turn in, or come in here and turn out, or turn in, and many times you're stuck. And this creates also some of the bottlenecks of how people are waiting for here to turn, and when they're coming in here, and you have a significant amount of conflicting movements, and that's what we're trying to fix. Now, one more slide, please. We'll go back to here, and I'll put the context of what would be upstream and downstream functional areas of intersection. It sounds boring, and trust me, in some cases it is. But functional area of an intersection corresponds to the importance of activity within the constraints of what is an intersection, who's using it. Upstream, like it sounds, you're heading into it as a car. Downstream, you're leaving away from it. Same thing here, upstream here, downstream here. The nice thing moving this driveway here is we move from an upstream characteristic to a downstream, which means we're right here on the previous slide, these cars were stacked and blocking here. Right here, you're hard to stack and block this when you're northbound is the queue that would have the stacking heading into this intersection. What it means is that there's very, very, very low likelihood that you'll ever have something directly blocking here. So while someone may have to patiently wait here, like they would already to exit, it's not nearly the issue here that it would be here. So again, I can't give perfect, but I can make a lot less bad and certainly much better than it is right now. If we go one step or one slide ahead, Steve had talked about, and we've done, my gosh, like 2 formal studies, an addendum, another addendum, significant work here. We did take a look at, part of the earlier studies, the idea that if you had roughly a driveway 200 feet south, that would correspond with where this Chili's driveway could potentially be over here, and tie it into here. In a perfect world, I don't disagree. That would be great. Here though, for how this building is here, and how this traffic would have to snake to get through here, and keep in mind, I also have to think about delivery trucks and semis and that sort of things, you cannot make that movement. It does not make that practical. So from where these parcel boundaries have always ended historically to where this building is, you'll note from that picture that we tore that old office area down here to put that through, serve the backside of these out here. This really is the best practical spot for this. Now, as we've been doing all this work, plans have, constantly evolved when different users show up, who's interested, who wants to be here, what do we analyze. So again, I'm not saying that this is perfect. This would be ideal. It simply isn't practical for the limits that we have there. But here tonight, what you can do is make it a heck of a lot better. Allow this to happen, allow this to be improved. This will be closed, to be very clear. We are closing this awful one, but replacing it with one that is far, far less awful and much safer than this one, even if not perfect. So again, in summary, this is the action you'll see later, the rezoning, the temporary use of the parking lot, driver requests that I would ask for you to approve tonight, and we can keep going on the development. How was that? Is it 5.5 minutes?
Yeah, excellent, thank you very much. Were you timing?
I'm happy to answer anything.
I didn't. All right, my bad.
I'm happy to answer it. You couldn't, DJ. I'm happy to answer anything.
Okay, all right.
So I know there's a lot that I threw in here, so happy to answer anything.
Is there a driveway north?
Put up the green arrow drawing. Yeah, that one, the sneaky one.
Is there a driveway to the northwest?
Right here?
Yeah.
Yep, so this is one. Can we back up on our slide stuff? Maybe 2 or 3 to show the, one more yet. One more yet, I lied. There we go. It's a lot of slides, Joe. So this is eventually what will be lot 2 when it's developed. So this is an existing driveway that we're keeping here. The nice thing is, and again, I don't want in any way minimized because anyone will tell you, more distance from an intersection is always safer. Zero argument there. Here though, by getting rid of this one, then we default back to this one, we're at over 180 feet here. So from a functional, what WSDOT, DOT considers Upstream of the 150 feet here, we exceed that. So really, we're exceeding here. Yes, of course, we're deficient here, but a lot better here in the downstream and upstream here. So we're reusing an existing cut here.
And what would the service be with the trucks and with the S-ing around? What, that physically can't be done, I guess?
So you have the model of the WB65 full-length semi, and they're not known for being nimble. So for these guys, the truck will come in, serve, and pull out. Quite frankly, I suppose they could do this too. It's just the way we've kind of planned it. For Daltrey, they'll come in like this, back in, and then pull out.
So could that driveway be an enter only? Would that be?
Well, a couple thoughts on that. Steve did mention earlier discussions here, and this was earlier version of traffic studies, how many lanes, how many splitters, how much limitation, especially on this access point right here, which most recent addendum we did, it called for on the front end, which is why we updated the drawings that have been submitted that we're meeting on tomorrow to talk about. That only one lane was needed. Now, could that always be expanded through discussion? Absolutely. It also said at the very beginning that access restrictions, limitations on crossing were not needed. It did say in the future, if more development of a certain kind shows up, access restrictions may be warranted at some point.
Yeah.
I would argue in some respect here, it's probably sooner rather than later, that here it would be needed. In earlier plans that we had shown that you could go left here, right out or right in, and then right and right, but not cross. It's probably an important aspect. But that was called up in the study. That can be re-reviewed again if plans and more situations want that to be discussed.
And if you're interested, I think, Steph, if you jump to the staff PowerPoint, go to that original exhibit that had the development areas. I think, and Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that has the original traffic impact analysis roadway design on it. That one, yeah. So if you kind of zoom in up at the top there, I think that's the one that was submitted. Both, either of you can correct me if that is not the one that was with the TIA, but I think that's the one.
This was the original one pre-addendum. So, well, I shouldn't even say original. Probably the second one by this point. This went early 23 maybe, something like that. But so here it shows like this would be your left in here, or right out, I'm sorry, right in. And this shows here you'd have splitter here, so you couldn't make this movement anymore. You couldn't cross on the front road or make a left here. You'd have to turn right.
Is that still occurring, just right turn?
No, the existing traffic analysis that came back from TADDY.
The current design plans call for the access restriction with the no left turn for the frontage road west of, you would not be able to go westbound to northbound. That splitter island will prevent that movement. That was contingent upon our approval of design.
On that one I have no argument with.
So there will be no westbound movement along that southern frontage road where he's showing that 15-foot separation. You won't have the queuing there because you won't be able to make a left and head north up to Mason Street. You will only be allowed to make a right-hand turn and go south along Hinkle Extended. That'll be the only movement available.
And then I believe some of the concern too was that since it's only a right turn from Hinkle heading, or sorry, from West Mason heading, yes, excuse me, heading east, going south, that cars would end up doing a U-turn to then be able to go north at that driveway as well.
We're a relatively narrow section of road there. I think people, if one tried it, they'd find real quickly they couldn't make that turn.
People are so skilled.
People are interesting. I'm not going to disagree on that point either.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
Could you briefly describe why we're diverting cars that way? I mean, I kind of remember, but we don't want people turning left because it stagnates and it blocks. Is that right?
Well, I guess two thoughts on that, Jim. Can we get to a wider aerial? It's pretty close. So right now, traffic here coming from the south, West Point, Wood Lane, that area, to access here, you have to do this right now. This is the only way. We're going to be taking that traffic and doing this. So you're greatly reducing the need to make that movement to begin with. And because of the short queuing stack here, it's a very unsafe move anyway. So we're greatly enhancing how people make that movement. Long-term, if you're here, if your point's west, it's kind of retraining a little bit. Do you go out to Packland if you want to move around, or other points that may show up in the future? Yes, but that becomes much safer from that movement. Could somebody also do this and do that? Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
So, to my question about the enter only, is that a bad idea? Or is that?
Doesn't change our opinion.
Doesn't change your opinion?
No.
Okay, okay.
Do we have any further questions for the applicant?
So that driveway in question, you can be heading north and turn left into it,
Correct.
or you can be heading south and turn right into it.
Correct.
And it's only going to be one lane heading south and one lane heading north.
Correct. Again, pending any design changes that we want to be made or we talk about or as discussed. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I was just going to ask Director Grenier, so you're still operating off of the original TI, which would not have a left-in, or it wouldn't have a
With
left.
all of the information we have received, we are still operating with the need for the dual lanes approaching on the south leg, the splitter island needing to come down to the middle of the driveway, and anticipated 200-foot queuing distance. We see nothing in any of the information that we've received that would cause our mind to change on that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Holder.
Thanks, Steve. Kathy Hinkus, 525 Antelope Trail, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I've lived on this west side for 35 years, and these frontage roads are really a pain. So just think about that as you're making your decisions. It makes life difficult for people over there and getting around. But as far as this development goes, the improvements that have been made on just that corner in viewing are beautiful. And we want to enhance that. I would never recommend against something Steve is doing. However, there's an 80-20 rule that says most of the time we're going to follow the recommendations, but at times we can't. And in this situation, there's already development there. There's existing development that they're working around, and this will only enhance the area. If there's issues, I think long-term, we can work through it, but that corner and that intersection is terrible as it exists. This will make it better. So I know it's difficult, and I know, as I sit on city council, you always want to make sure that you're following the rules. But there's situational leadership. And in this situation, I think we need to make an exception and allow this development to continue as we look at that corner. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is currently open.
I have a question for Steve. What is the recommendation from you guys is to, based on your existing information, not approve? What would be the risk for approving this when it comes to the queuing and the traffic?
You're going to have a congestion nightmare. It's going to be inherently unsafe.
Turning.
Anybody attempting to leave that northern driveway, make a left and head north, there is not going to be any kind of acceptable gap for them to do it, and it's going to force people to push the issue into an unsafe situation trying to hit a northbound gap, ignoring southbound traffic. You're opening the door for a massive risk of collision there. 80 feet is simply too short. That's why there's 200 feet there to give acceptable distance, sight distance, for the southbound traffic, for that driver to make an educated decision. And also, that additional 120 feet to the south provides a little bit more extension from beyond that queue of northbound vehicles that are queuing up, because that northbound remember how that intersection is functioning. The frontage road coming from the hospital, the westbound frontage road, and Hinkle northbound, as they come together, before you even get to the Mason Street intersection, are going to be at a stop condition, stop signs. Now imagine, if you will, being a motorist at either one of those locations, and the Mason Street light turns green. You still have to come up and stop at the stop sign before you proceed into the Mason Street intersection. And how are those vehicles going to stagger and work their way in? One coming off the frontage road, one off of Hinkle Street, or are two going to try to jet through on Hinkle and cut the guy off? That guy over on the frontage road, maybe he's heading out to Oneida. So he has to come off of the frontage road, get all the way over into the left turn bay, and cut off everything that's coming north on Hinkle, okay? That intersection is just a god-awful mess. There's no way for me to signalize that and get that to coordinate properly. Okay, so we made certain concessions to allow that to happen. One of them was to cut that eastbound frontage road off, so we didn't have that in the mix. And another one was to make sure that we strictly adhere to the intersection offset distances for the driveways, to take the driveways out of the mix as well. It's an inherently unsafe condition, and I cannot, at the risk of my license, Alder Hutchison is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Wisconsin. He knows what I'm talking about. Okay? Our ethics code prevents us. I cannot give you a recommendation that I feel is inherently unsafe or destined to fail. I can't do it. This one, this is a no-go for us. There's yeses, there's nos, and there's hell nos. And this is a hell no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have another question. I guess for the petitioner then. Yes, thank you. So from the original, what was submitted, why this change? Addendum number 8, 10, 14, whatever it is. Why this change from what they currently have?
Well, keep in mind, again, we've analyzed many different driveways, approaches, accesses, lanes. Again, it's been 2.5 years of traffic studies, $93,000 spent on them. We've looked at a lot. A lot of it is dependent on, as traffic studies will tell you, who's the user, what is the traffic volume, what is the intended projection on that. Things can adjust based on a lot of that. So as users have updated and changed, that is why sometimes the situation has changed from what was designed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I don't have much to add. I am in support of the project and the driveway distance. I know that those frontage roads are a nightmare in general, so it would be nice to have something that would bring improvement there and to alleviate the congestion.
I have another question for the Alder.
Oh, me?
No, the other, I mean, yeah. Sorry.
This one or me?
Kathy.
I mean, Alder is for the, is,
Me?
she's part of the neighborhood. That's her neighborhood.
Yeah, then, yes, you.
Okay.
It's right on my edge.
Yes. Maybe it's-
I get all the credit or blame. I don't
Yeah.
know which one it is, but.
So with this current proposal, why do you think will improve the conditions of the neighborhood? Based on everything you've heard, why do you think this would improve the conditions?
I think because it encourages a development right there. And
yeah,
it brings
why would
people
it?
off of the road there. And changing that driveway from the frontage road to the side, which he was saying that he would stop the one driveway going in, it would be on the side off of Hinkle. And I see the trouble with the delivery trucks trying to get in, or the semis coming in, what he was explaining to you, trying to come around and get in there. So it would cause a bit of an issue for that.
For the end user in this area, what is the impact to their experience traveling in this corridor with this proposal? Is it a positive impact, or is it status quo? For the end user?
I look at it as a positive.
And why?
Again, it brings that possibility of accessing all of that development off of the road there, going in. Honestly, I personally would like to see that piece of the frontage road not be there, so that it would just bring everything behind the businesses. And this is kind of it's been in the talks, but I know it's not necessarily happening, but it would be nice because I think the frontage road is such a problem there. Again, that's not on the subject here tonight, but that's just something to think about.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Alder.
Thank you. Bill Galvin, 1244 Emily Street. I lived out on King of Arms for a number of years, and then also over by the, off of Country Club Road. My children went to school at Douglas MacArthur School. That intersection's been bad. It's been bad. And the city, what can they do to improve it? Have they done anything to improve it? We haven't spent any money to try and work with the property owners to change driveways or any kind of access or anything else like this. What Mr. Bader is proposing here isn't perfect either. And I agree with the engineer, it's not great. But I also think, from what I'm seeing personally, I think it's going to improve the opportunities there for people to ingress and egress out of there. Now, there's always going to be traffic crashes, because we've got people on their phones, we've got people not paying attention, and you're going to have 300, 400-foot rules, all things like that. We're still going to have crashes. I think with that particular intersection, you're actually improving it to some degree in some of the spots. Now, would it be nice if they could work out some more, with it, to widen it out, close up some driveways and things like that? That's a possibility. I don't know. I haven't been working on this project, being down on the east side, but I'm just talking from personal experience. All the years of taking my kids to school down there, trying to get from one side to the other, up and down that frontage road, that thing has been just a balled-up mess from day one. And, I see nothing but, personally, I think it's going to improve it. I think it's going to help things out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alder.
Yeah. I'm sorry, who first did that?
Jim.
Oh, okay, so we've got first by Alder Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Rubinsky. To close the floor, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
To make a statement, being a professional engineer, or foreman was, I'm finding it very hard to go against what our director is recommending. I respect Garrett Bader as a very intelligent designer of things. It's a matter of what's acceptable, I guess, because I think things have been said appropriately. I think Alder has said there's going to be crashes. There are. And I think the goal is to kind of limit the number of crashes if we can. I think 80 feet is a big ask. It's either 4 car lengths or 5, depending on the car you have. That's how long that is. It could be only 4 car lengths. And if you're trying to turn left and go north, that's all the time you got to determine where you're going. And there are reasons why there's distances. I just personally cannot vote against that design criteria. I just can't. So if you aren't a professional engineer, go at it. But that's where I am right now.
So you're saying you can't support it based on it's about 4 to 5 car lengths?
It's about 4 to 5 car lengths, right. I don't know that intersection very well. I live on the east side. I've been by it just a couple times in my 34 years living here. So I don't know that intersection at all. But people who know it, know this will be better, a lot better. I just can't, better to me is not enough, I guess. But it is better than what it is, so.
You know, I'm familiar with this intersection. There used to be an Ace Auto right over there past the Verizon, and in '95 when my convertible got smashed, that was where I had it fixed, so that was 30 years ago now. So, I mean, this intersection's always been bad. I mean, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have the 35 or the 85. But I don't know, at the same time, I feel like I really don't want that 35. There's no perfect answer up here, besides being able to tear down buildings and start all over, and that's not gonna happen.
Question for staff, is the driveway
Right here.
that's currently 35 feet, that's going away regardless with this development, right? Like it's not one or the other, is it?
That my understanding is that with Hinkle Street being built, that those intersections, that driveway would need to be closed off as well as the Chili's.
Oh, okay.
That's my understanding. If there's somebody here who can correct that, please. But that's my understanding.
My understanding is, what I was talking with Tom Sherman's, that when Hinkle gets built,
One
that-
second.
well, it's gotta be designed. and-
Oh, okay.
And all of that, that those two driveways on the frontage roads that are that close to the intersection would have to be closed.
Gone, okay, right.
Because that's a right turn only there as well, so. You can't.
Like, very preliminary discussions with our acting traffic engineer. And very early in the discussions too, so.
So we can make the motion to approve it
So
as staff recommended? Without those two?
Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's a good point. So our PUD does not contain those provisions in it, so you would just have to make a motion to add the 80 and
The 2 and 3,
yes, into the ordinance.
those 2 points, basically, from the 4 points. And I forgot what the other 2 points were.
The first one was just amending the boundary
Oh, right.
of the lots, of the PUD, and then the fourth was lot 17.
Right. The single family and
Versus
duplex.
sizes.
Okay. Approval. With the exception of access distance from intersection of Virginia Bridge. Okay, so that,
So if you were deciding you wanted to recommend approval as requested, you would just approve as requested. If you wanted to remove the 200-foot separation distance, you could, and only that, you could approve as requested with the exception of amendment number 3. If you wanted to only exclude the distance from the intersection for the one driveway, that is amendment number 2. So what the petitioner is asking is for everything, and if there's anything you want to pull out, this is where you would put it.
right. Well, and 2 and 3 kind of go together, so we could just pick one or the other because those distances are all in a straight line.
Yeah, in theory, you could approve Amendment 3, but it would be a moot point once it gets to
Right.
drafting it, yeah.
I think if I'm correct, Dina, no matter what recommendation, the conditions, rock solid from staff, right?
Yeah, because you would hate to not see that CSM get approved and then have,
Zoning changed?
yeah, the PUD then not follow the property lines any longer.
Do we have any further discussion?
I do not.
Okay. I mean, otherwise does anyone want to, I would entertain a motion. And I guess my thought process is I can't go against what Mr. Greenberg is saying. So personally, I'm following the recommendation of staff. That's my thought process on this. Because we can't get it perfect, and I don't think we're gonna be happy with, I mean, he's saying it's unsafe, 85 feet, that 35 foot's gonna get closed off regardless once Hinkle's put in. I'm really not sure what the compromise is here, but I feel confident in what staff is recommending. What happens if nothing happens?
Nobody makes
Well,
a
somebody
motion.
I guess
I mean, I'm willing to entertain a motion over here, but,
Well, you have to do some type of motion. It's either a motion to
Right.
approve or deny.
motion to, right, okay. Go ahead, Heather.
If we go with staff recommendation, does that mean we just killed it, the PUD?
No, it means that.
We're not okay with the distances.
It's just the driveway distance
2 and
and then
3.
the separation. All the other elements are still in there. So it's not all or nothing, these are elements of a very large and complicated PUD with lots of moving parts. I don't know from a developer standpoint what that does for his, his project.
So
but
if we approve it as staff recommends right now, we'll likely be back here again with another driveway iteration in the future, I'm guessing. But this gets the project moving forward if we recommend it.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Director. There was a meeting set up for you all to discuss the new addition to the PIA. Is that
We're
happening?
discussing the design of Hinkle.
Okay, which was part of the update that was shown on our site plan.
But that does not include driveway locations. Those would be covered separately under site plan.
Gotcha.
Which is how got flagged. Because we're reviewing the site plan right now for the Dollar General, or Dollar Tree, excuse me.
And I don't know if there's any advantage or disadvantage to this. I mean, you could, depending on what the conversation goes with the roadway design, you could hold the item until the next plan commission meeting. Which ask for an update
January.
from that meeting.
Okay, let me be very clear. We have made our decision that 80 feet is unacceptable. For as long as I am the director of this department, that decision stands, period.
So holding
All right, then.
probably is not relevant.
So, as recommended?
And generally, what will typically happen is you'll recommend approval, and even if it's a negative vote, then you either get a second or you vote it down.
Is there a motion on the floor?
No.
There's not.
What, just for clarification, the number, Amendment 3, does that have to do with the 80-foot driveway?
Has to do with
Kind
the
of.
distance between the two driveways. So if number 2 is removed, it becomes a moot point. There is no distance between two driveways because there aren't two driveways any longer.
So why don't we just do away, well, I I guess a motion would be just to approve as recommended. Well, I guess, yeah. Approve as recommended would be the same as just not approving the 8-foot.
Right, that's what they're, yeah, that's. Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
With the condition to the approving and recording of CSM.
Basically, exactly as staff has written.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody's got a second.
Do we have a second? Or,
I'm constantly going back and forth in my head, like, how do I make this make everybody?
It seems like
don't
you
think it's
can't right
possible.
now make everyone happy.
Yeah.
Steve said no.
I mean-
Someone can make, well, I guess we can let it die and someone make another motion. We can't
No,
let this.
I think,
Right, we can't.
I think there's no real good solution here. I'll second.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Alder Hutchinson, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. Probably no more discussion. So go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, all right, so we got 5. And then to City Council for December 3rd. All right, moving on to the next item, which is a public hearing. And this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda item. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor or oppose in providing information, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing. Questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 15. Public hearing on a request to rezone 2425 West Mason Street Frontage Road and parts of 2415 and 2405 West Mason Street Frontage Road from general commercial to highway commercial, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments LLC on behalf of GB Real Estate Investments LLC, DJG West Mason LLC, and DTHMC West Mason LLC property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Garrett, in his presentation, really did a great job of explaining kind of the next phase and what else is going on with his redevelopment out here. So this one involves the rezoning of the properties that you see in red, which would be lots 1 and 2 of that CSM that we keep referring back to. And this is what the site looks like. It was the former Auto Aces building and then that green space. The property is currently zoned C1. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, sorry, Steph.
Wait, which one do you want? Zoning?
So,
There you
no, okay, so, with the way that the zoning is set up right now out there, the properties to the west and the south of it are already zoned C2, highway commercial. And the intended uses on these properties, specifically the one that Seven Brew, which is a drive-through coffee shop, is gonna be. In the C1, you can do a conditional use permit for the drive-through, but since there's a high possibility of another drive-through auto orientated type business going to the property to the east as well, we recommended to just have it rezoned to C2, which does meet, or I should say it does go along with other properties in the neighborhood. If you go back, if you want to go up to the future land use, so that whole area is commercial. And then to the south, you've got some high-density residential with apartments in there. But then obviously now you're gonna have with the Southwest Woods development, you're gonna have residential out there, single family as well. So these are the two parcels that are affected. And yeah, I guess that's.
Excellent, thank you.
So sure not to give her.
I know, right, I know. All right, so now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who'd like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 16. Consideration with possible action on a request to rezone 2425 West Mason Street frontage road and parts of 2415 and 2405 West Mason Street frontage road from general commercial to highway commercial, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments LLC on behalf of GB Real Estate Investments LLC, DJG West Mason LLC, and DTHMC West Mason LLC property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So our recommendation is to approve the request to rezone the property from general commercial to highway commercial with the condition that the CSM 24-17 be approved and recorded.
Motion to approve as recommended.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rubinski, second by Commissioner Daniels. Any further discussion? Go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that will go forward then to City Council for December 3rd. Moving on to item number 17, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 17. Public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit to allow for a surface parking lot on parts of 2425, 2415, 2405 West Mason Street frontage road, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments LLC on behalf of GB Real Estate Investments LLC, DJG West Mason LLC, and DTHMC West Mason LLC property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this one actually deals with a little bit of a different subject matter. We're looking at a conditional use permit to allow a surface parking lot, which this parcel would eventually end up being rezoned to C2. It's currently C1. In both districts, actually, C1, C2, surface parking lots require conditional use permit. And so he's here to get that, and I guess once we get to the recommendation, I can talk a little bit more about it. But here's just that overview. The business to the 7 Brew that's going in where the Auto Aces used to be, they're going to end up using this parking lot for their business. There's a number of driveways that, drive lanes for that particular business, and so they want to put the parking for like the employees there, and then they would then for the future business on lot 2 would also use that parking area as well.
All right.
I think everybody knows what the area around it looks like at this point.
Did you want to show the future site plan?
I don't know if I did put it in there. It is in there, okay. I forgot.
Kind of, that's the point you were just making.
Thank
Now
you,
it's
Dave.
visual.
So, as you can see where the parking is, and then where the drive-through would be. So there isn't going to be a principal use on the property by the time that the parking lot gets constructed, so we need to get the conditional use permit.
Okay. All right, so now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 18. Consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to allow for a surface parking lot on parts of 2425, 2415, and 2405 West Mason Street frontage road, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments, LLC, on behalf of GB Real Estate Investments, LLC, DJG West Mason, LLC, and DTHMC West Mason, LLC, property owners.
Thank you. So parking lots are permitted by right only when they're accessory to a principal use. In this case, the parking lot would be the principal use. Staff has determined that the use does comply with the 7 standards in the CUP requirements. However, we don't feel that this is the highest and best use of the site. In general, allowing surface parking as a principal use is poor practice and discouraged. That said, staff does support the use, but only on a limited short-term basis. We recommend placing a sunset clause on the CUP, limiting the use to 2 years from the date of the CUP approval. It's similar to what happened with H.J. Martin. You can reapply for another CUP at the end if you need that extension. So our recommendation is to approve of the request with 4 conditions. Approval of the previous action, the rezone, approval of the CSM, and then putting the sunset clause on it that the CUP for the principal parking lot is valid for 2 years after city council approval. A permitted principal use must be established within the 2 years, or the paved parking area must be removed. And then the parking lot would need to comply with Green Bay Municipal Code.
So I have a question, because now we don't do a lot of these sunset things, and now we've had 2 today, so.
So why?
I mean, how do we, I guess, well, I'm curious how we keep track.
Why are we saying 2 here versus 3? Is there a best practice, or?
I think it's because of the parking lot.
I
It's a
think it-
completely different situation.
Well, I think that was the number that we felt comfortable with as far as anticipating development occurring on that other parcel. If you want to change that time.
There's just a question.
Yeah, it's,
I was gonna
the
say-
applicant was maybe talking more like 10 years, and that was just too.
Sunsetting is something that we don't do often, but you do see it. And usually it's try to accommodate a sequencing of development that isn't typical. So developing a parking lot first and then waiting for a user to come after, or developing a parking lot on a site for an off-site user is not typical. And so that's why you're getting a typical recommendation.
With the end result of a shared parking lot in between 2 businesses, which is.
At the end of the day.
Which is what we want, but wrong order of development.
So I'm confused how it's 24, are we just basically putting it in lot 3, but it's parking for 24, 25, 24, 14, 15, and 24? I'm confused as to how that's always, the parking, but it's all the way over on 1, it's not obviously actually those addresses.
So the problem you have is those addresses are all changing with the certified survey map
Oh, right,
that's coming in. But it would be parking for lot 1, Lot 2 and potentially other lots, because we allow shared parking up to 1,000 feet away.
Okay, so in the parking lot is gonna be between 2 and 3, is that what the drawing that we're seeing?
It's between.
1 and 2, okay, all right.
So it kind of, if you go to the slide.
I see, okay.
This line-
For some reason, I was thinking it was
There you
the
go.
third, and it
Yeah, it looks
was,
like
okay.
it was all.
All the way to the side, but now this is the 1 and 2, but this will be shared parking for all 3 of those. But we don't know, because it depends on the whole, right, because it depends on the map, okay. Okay. Okay,
And as far as how do we keep track of that, staff will keep track of that.
right. You guys got a list of sunset?
Wait, yes.
Our calendars do.
Oh, okay. All right.
I just think it's odd that, and I know it's atypical, but I think it's odd that we did a sunset date of 3 years before, and now we're proposing 2. That's odd to me, even though it is atypical. I have no, with this particular developer, I mean, he seems like he's very, he wants to get people in there, but from a fairness standpoint, why would we offer 2 years versus 3 years, and we gave the other, we don't do sunsets a lot, but we gave the other company 3. I know it's different, I know it's atypical. We gave them 5?
Now we did.
We gave them 3 last
But
time.
the first time it came, we gave them 3.
But here's the thing, we're talking a parking lot versus the uses inside of a building that's
Right.
existing. I mean, you're talking, right now, there's nothing, it's,
Yeah.
so your parking lot use versus the actual uses inside of a building that's already been operating like that for 3 years. I guess I don't see it as a fairness thing, like we can only, if we're gonna sunset stuff, we can only do it 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. I think it's a case by case basis. I don't feel like it'd be unfair. Cause 2 years is, I don't want a parking lot, I mean.
I don't think it's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be a parking lot for 2 years, quite honestly. I was just saying it from a
And that would be great.
standpoint.
Perfect. That's what we want.
Motion to approve as recommended.
Second.
So we've got a motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. Any more discussion? You just look like you want to say something.
No.
All right. It's okay.
No, I brought up my point, I think it's just from a
Right,
fairness
okay, no, I get it. I
standpoint,
understand, right.
The complexity and not a one size fit all, I'm just trying to be fair.
No, I
and
understand.
consistent.
And I was having the same thoughts, but I agree that it is case by case on these sunset clauses, just like we just gave 5 after giving 3.
3, right.
So I think it's case by case.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, so you've got a motion, Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Fullwilder. It was you, right?
It was.
right, okay, all right. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then that will move forward then to City Council for December 3rd. Informational, Director's Report.
Can we get the long director's report tonight?
Long back report, do you have any questions for me?
We saw the fence.
House, new land, right, and I'm getting started in the next week or so, the property is scheduled for next week. So, do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, guys.
Do we have any questions? Thank you very much, Earl. Date of the next meeting, January 13th, 2025.
Motion to adjourn.
January 6th.
Or January.
We're pretty sure it's January 6th, but we have to double check some stuff.
Okay, or it might be January 6th.
We'll let you know.
I still motion to adjourn.
Motion,
Second.
second by Commissioner Daniels, all those in favor? Aye. All right, good night, everybody, see you next year.